Chapter 1076. Qin Yining naturally knew that the road ahead would be bumpy, but now that this matter was over, she wanted to return home as quickly as possible. Pang Zhao's abilities were indeed outstanding, but Qin Yining was still worried about his safety. He'd suffered a beating, but she didn't know the truth behind it. Qin Yining really didn't know how he was doing right now. Mr. Su is right. We still have a long way to go. Qin Yining's group stayed at the harbor for 2 days. The citizens of Water Swamp Country were already shrouded in a tense atmosphere, and the soldiers and warships stationed at the harbor posed an even greater threat to them. As a result, the purchase of fresh water and food went even more smoothly than expected. Before leaving, Qin Yining once again led her group to Sakurai's grave. She lowered her eyes to look at Sakurai's tombstone, then let out a long sigh. "Sakurai, I'm leaving now." The grass and trees rustled pleasantly, as if Sakurai was smiling in response. Qin Yining took a deep breath, then slowly exhaled. Finally, she revealed a relieved smile. People lived for a lifetime, and the grass and trees had an autumn. The dead were already dead, but the living still had to carry on. She still had many important things to do, because she'd never thought of herself as a woman who needed to be protected. The burden on her shoulders had never been any less than Pang Zhao's. "Let's go." Qin Yining took one last look at the tombstone, then led her group away. When she returned to the harbor, she immediately gave the order to break camp. The well-trained guards boarded the ship one after another and weighed the anchor. Qin Yining stood at the bow of the ship and looked back at the shore. A thin figure stood on the pier, waving his arms to bid them farewell. Qin Yining looked at the slender figure and couldn't help but think of Sakurai. "It's Hiragana." Qin Yining also waved at Hiragana. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji stood on either side of Qin Yining and also waved goodbye to Hiragana. "What do you think will happen to Water Swamp Country in the future?" Qin Yining shook her head. "Who knows? Actually, based on Hiragana's behavior that day, this old man feels that he's already taken your advice to heart. If that's true, then the people of Water Swamp Country are lucky." By the time Qin Yining's group arrived at Golden Harbor, the court was already in chaos. Li Qiqian had sent many people to search for the treasure, as expected. The emperor was furious and searched everywhere for Lu Heng's whereabouts. The Lu family faction in the imperial court was suppressed like never before. Even concubine Zhuang was demoted to a servant and was casually arranged to spend the rest of her life in a remote corner, not to mention the Bian family. Lu Heng deceived the emperor and embezzled the treasure with the intention of rebelling. How innocent could Lu Heng's in-laws be? Pang Xiao watched as Li Qiqian focused all of his energy on these matters. The refugees from the south were about to reach the capital, but he didn't ask about them at all. However, he wasn't trusted right now, and his advice wouldn't be accepted. Even Li Qiqian didn't want to see him, so he could only order his subordinates to do their best to help shopkeeper Zhong, who was in charge of disaster relief. "Wang Yi, the Lu clan has been dealt with like this. Your Majesty must hate the Lu clan to the core. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so merciless as to deal with everyone related to the Lu clan." Pang Xiao only smiled at Tang Xiu's words. When the dynasty was founded, the Lu clan had been of great help to Li Qiqian. Now, because of the treasure, Li Qiqian had dealt with the Lu clan so harshly. The other great clans were bound to be wary. Once people's hearts were scattered, it would be difficult to win them over again. In Pang Zhao's view, Li Qiqian's actions were like killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. But he was also being suspected. No one was willing to pay attention to him. Even if he told his thoughts to Li Qiqian would only guess if he had ulterior motives. He wouldn't put all of his energy on the disaster. Pang Xiao shook his head and sighed. He changed the topic and asked, "Has there been any news from the people you arranged?" Tang Xiu said with a smile. "Wang Yi already asked once today. Our people have been avoiding people's eyes and ears and have been waiting near Golden Harbor to receive Wang Fei. When Wang Fei returns, there should be news immediately." Pang Xiao said, "I can't leave the capital right now. Otherwise, I would go personally to receive them. Not only will there be ambushes along the way, there's also a high chance of encountering heroes. After all, many refugees are heading to the capital." If people are forced into a corner in order to survive, they can do anything. Fortunately, Wang Fei has enough people. Wang Yi doesn't need to be too worried. How could Pang Xiao not be worried? It was just that there was no better way at the moment. Before Qin Yining landed at Golden Harbor, he had arranged for the ship with the treasure and the other battleships to land on an uninhabited island. Pang Xiao's people that had been trained as guards of the Wang Fu had also scattered. When they arrived at Golden Harbor, they went around the pier that had been destroyed by the fire. When they landed at the temporary pier, Qin Yining only had Su Weiji, Xieyu, and the people that usually followed her. Everyone was disguised as normal merchants. When they landed, they found that the atmosphere of Golden Harbor was completely different from when they had left. The people of the city looked worried. The restaurants and tea houses were closed. There were very few people in the market. It was a bleak scene. Xieyu's brow furrowed, and she said in a low voice, "Wang Fei, the situation doesn't seem right." Qin Yining pursed his lips and nodded. His expression was grave as he said, "It seems that something big has happened in the court while we were gone. It has affected the lives of the common people." After walking around the streets for a while, they didn't see many people. Qin Yining said, "Let's go to the guest station first. Today, we'll buy a carriage and prepare food to leave. We can also take the opportunity to inquire about the situation in court." Qin Yining had a feeling that this matter was related to the fire at Golden Harbor. But the information that he had inquired about made Qin Yining's heart jump. "You're saying that the famine has already broken out?" "Yes," Jingzhe said worriedly. "Right now, the famine in the south is very serious. Many of the victims have gone to the capital to find a way to survive. Because Golden Harbor is by the sea, there is some seafood to eat. Also, this place isn't the only way to Shangjing, so it only looks slightly different. If it was in the south, I'm afraid that every family would have white silk and there would be people as thin as firewood everywhere." Ji Yun frowned and said, "It's no wonder that when I went to discuss the banquet with the innkeeper looked troubled. Even the rice porridge was more than 5 times more expensive than usual. In any case, we could still eat with some money. But the refugees in the south can't do anything even if they have money. There's no way to survive at home. The common people will naturally form groups to find a place to continue living. Your Majesty must be in a terrible fix right now," Xieyu said. Qin Yining shook his head. "My heart aches for the common people." Xieyu and Su Weiji also sighed emotionally. Just as everyone was discussing this matter in the inn, a figure suddenly flashed by the back window. Chapter 1077. Qin Yining was frightened by the sudden roar and jumped up. Ji Yun, Jingzhe, and the others quickly surrounded Qin Yining. They warily gripped their weapons and paid attention to the movements in front of the door and window. A short while later, Ji Dashun quickly walked in. He raised his hands and said, "Wang Fei, just now, a shadow flashed by the back door." This subordinate did not have time to see what the person looked like. "It must be some spies they're spying on your whereabouts." Ji Dashun was slightly vexed. At such a crucial time, they, the Jinghu Wei, were confident in their martial arts, but they did not find the other shadow. It was clear that they were not as skilled as the other. Seeing Ji Dashun's downcast mood, Qin Yining smiled and said, "No matter. If we can find the other shadow, we can take precautions." "It seems that someone has already noticed Golden Harbor," Xieyu said in a low voice. The matter of Wang Fei going out to sea was done secretly. No one should know. Su Weiji lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. He said, "It must be a coincidence, but we have to plan for the worst." Qin Yining thought and said, "We will pay attention on the way back to Jing. It is not a bad thing to be more prepared." Everyone nodded. Qin Yining was anxious to return home. After making some arrangements, he led the group back to Jing. What they saw along the way made their hearts clench. The refugees were dressed in rags as they hurried in groups with dull eyes. Whenever they encountered a large tree that was still in good condition, they wanted to go up and peel off a piece of bark to eat. They did not encounter any streams or rivers along the way. There were some that just ate in the muddy water. There was only to talk about wild vegetables or game. They did not see any along the way. It was Qin Yining's group that had the advantage of numbers and tight security. Everyone was holding a shining sword in their hands. The refugees did not dare to come close. Otherwise, they would have encountered bandits a long time ago. Even the horses that they had brought were the most delicious food in the eyes of the refugees. Qin Yining saw them like this, and his heart was filled with compassion. He would help orphans and widows that were traveling alone. But when there were many people, he did not dare to stop. She did not want people to starve to death, but if she stopped, they would definitely be robbed. She was afraid that she would not be able to return to Jing. Without any other choice, Qin Yining could only protect himself first before he had the energy to help others. The journey from Golden Harbor to the city was not far, but the journey was very long. It wasn't easy for them to get close to the capital. Qin Yining and the others found a deserted forest and set up camp. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. If we hurry for another half a day, we should be able to see the city gate by noon tomorrow. Yes. Fortunately, the journey was smooth. Xiaoyu began to talk about what he had heard on the road. It is said that your majesty returned to the capital more than a month ago. He did not immediately enter the city. Instead, he camped outside the city and was welcomed by the officials. There are also people among the commoners who say that your majesty went on an inspection tour incognito. Yes, Su Weiji smiled. However, many commoners are saying that your majesty wants to go on an inspection tour incognito and has the energy to build the imperial mausoleum, but does not have the money to help the commoners. Everyone's resentment has been building up. Sooner or later, it will explode. Qin Yining did not know what to say for a moment. Li Qitian's actions had become more and more eccentric in recent years. In the past, he was willing to put on an act, but now he was too lazy to even hide it. The commoners were suffering from natural disasters, but the emperor only cared about building the imperial mausoleum and did not care about the famine. It was very difficult for the commoners not to feel resentful towards him. Moreover, the commoners did not know why the emperor was doing this. In the eyes of the commoners, the emperor was rich and was the richest person in the dynasty. A rich emperor was so stingy towards his own commoners and did not care at all. Li Qitian's actions would sooner or later arouse the anger of the commoners. Tomorrow, we will return to the capital. Following this, we will deal with Wang Yi. Qin Yining smiled. Our trip this time can be considered smooth and did not waste much time. There is still time to leave it to Wang Yi to think of a solution. Xiaoyu laughed and said, "It is rare to see Wang Fei wait for Wang Yi to solve a problem. Usually, if there is a difficult matter, Wang Fei will do it herself before Wang Yi even reaches out." Yes, Su Weiji also smiled. He had wanted to tease Qin Yining, but he was worried that Qin Yining would be thin-skinned and did not say more. Someone took out the prepared dry food and other items and distributed the hot water that had just been boiled. Everyone started to eat the dry food with the hot water. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji saw that Qin Yining did not dislike the dry steam buns at all and were filled with admiration. Sometimes, when they were tired from the journey, they rejoiced. Every time they saw Qin Yining, she was always smiling and full of vitality. She did not complain to anyone when she suffered hardships and was so approachable. They really admired her. After eating, everyone started to rest. Only a few people were left to guard the perimeter. Ji Yin was staying in Qin Yining's tent. Jing Zhe, Liao Zhibing, Ji Dashun, and the others were arranged to guard outside the tent. The security was very tight. After most of the night passed, it was clear that it was safe tonight. Everyone relaxed slightly. Jing Zhe and the others changed shifts and left Xiao Shui to guard outside. Just when Xiao Shui was so tired that she could not open her eyes and was relying on her willpower to stay awake, she suddenly heard a series of hurried footsteps. Xiao Shui suddenly woke up and jumped up from beside the fire. "Quick, get up! Look!" Xiao Shui's voice was not loud, but everyone immediately got up and looked alert. Even if they were too tired to open their eyes, they forced themselves to stay awake and observe their surroundings. After waiting for a while, there was still no movement. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Who knew that at this moment, they would suddenly see a group of shabbily dressed farmers rushing over. Qin Yining could not see clearly under the moonlight. When they got closer, Qin Yining realized that these people were not refugees. Although their clothes were tattered, she had seen a lot along the way. She knew what the real refugees would do. The people in front of her who were dressed like refugees were all tall and sturdy. Although they were not very fat, they all had standard looks. They did not look like they had been starving or freezing. She could tell from their complexions and aura. When they were about to reach them, Su Weiji and Xiaoyu nervously ordered their people, "Protect the masters." Their shouts caused everyone to regain their composure. Qin Yining said in a low voice, "Since these people are trying to hit a stone with an egg, let's take a look." Just as everyone was prepared, the other party formed a group and rushed towards the capital. They all shouted, "Dog Emperor, he embezzled the wealth and food." Chapter 1078. Yes. Everyone immediately responded in a loud voice. Their nerves stretched taut as they waited. The group of disaster victims rushed forward as soon as they got close. However, they bypassed the carriages with their luggage and headed straight for Qin Yining. At this point, what was there to not understand? Jing Zhe and Ji Dashun shouted loudly, "Protect Master!" Then they grabbed their weapons and led everyone to charge forward. Qin Yining was protected by Ji Yun and Xiao Shui. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji were also protected by Jinghu Wei. The assassins could not get close to them for a while. However, nearly 100 assassins were coming at them menacingly. It was obvious that they were familiar with the terrain around them. It would be harder for Qin Yining to escape in a short period of time. The situation fell into a state of panic. Qin Yining was protected by Ji Yun and Xiao Shui. She dodged to the left, then to the right. Under the night sky, her vision was also obstructed. Qin Yining could be considered calm. Over the years, she had encountered countless dangers. Perhaps it was because she had experienced so much that she felt numb. "Princess, newbie will protect you," to a corner. Ji Yun waved her soft sword and stabbed an assassin. Then she pulled Qin Yining and quickly retreated. Qin Yining did not say a word. She only nodded and followed Ji Yun and Xiao Shui's footsteps. They gradually killed their way out of the encirclement and away from the battle. The sound of fighting and the clanging of weapons made Qin Yining realize what a battlefield was like. She couldn't help but think that Pang Xiao had been fighting on the battlefield for many years, and the scenes he had seen were even more tragic than this. There was nothing worse than this. Xiao Shui and Ji Yun fought their way out and protected Qin Yining as they approached the forest. They all let out a sigh of relief. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji were also escorted over. However, before they could let out a sigh of relief, there was a sudden movement in the forest. "Princess, be careful." Xiao Shui reacted the fastest. When she heard a whoosh coming from above her head, she immediately flew forward and shielded Qin Yining with her body. A huge net fell from the sky and tied up Qin Yining and Xiao Shui tightly. Then it dragged them into the forest. Jinghu Wei, who was standing next to Ji Yun, Xie Yi, and Su Yi, reacted quickly and roared as he chased after them. At this time, the rest of the people who were held back by the assassins dressed as disaster victims also realized that they had been lured away. They dropped their hands and chased after Qin Yining. Qin Yining and Snowy were tied up tightly. Qin Yining and Snowy were forced to stick close to each other. They could barely open their eyes, let alone move their hands. There were bushes and shrubs in the forest. After being dragged for a while, they were scratched. Xiao Shui was furious. She tried her best to protect Qin Yining from getting hurt, but she was powerless. She could only shout, "You're so treacherous. You ambush people and even hurt women. What kind of ability is this? If you have the ability, come out and fight me one-on-one." Xiao Shui was met with silence. Qin Yining was dragged for a while. The clothes on his back were torn by the branches of a large net. He felt a sharp pain in his shoulder blade. Xiao Shui's 5 senses were sharp. She immediately smelled the scent of blood. "Master, you're injured." Qin Yining was trapped in the net. His posture was awkward. He said with difficulty, "I'm fine." Without waiting for Qin Yining to say another word, the dragging stopped. He felt the world spinning around him. Then, he and Xiao Shui were thrown into the carriage. Someone rushed the carriage to the official road. Several horsemen followed closely behind the carriage and left quickly. At this time, although Ji Yun and the others tried their best to chase after the carriage, their legs could not match the speed of the horses. Moreover, after the chaotic battle, everyone's physical strength was depleted. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji were old. They were panting and exhausted, a lot of energy to catch up. Where's the princess consort? Ji Yun's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. The princess consort and Xiao Shui were caught and put into the carriage. Su Weiji stomped his foot. Aya, how can we explain this to Wang Yi? We're about to reach the capital. The people who caught the princess consort must have followed us all the way. They took advantage of the fact that we're about to reach the capital tomorrow and are slightly relaxed to take action. Xiaoyu analyzed. Su Weiji also said, yes, and the other party obviously wants to catch the princess consort alive. At this time, this old man can think of many people who might have kidnapped the princess consort. There are too many suspects. At this time, we can only split up. Some of us will follow the carriage, while the others will send a letter to Wang Yi when the city gates open tomorrow morning. The carriage's ruts are easy to follow, but we can't match their speed. Jing's mouth instantly started to bubble. He gritted his teeth and said, I hope the other party won't hurt the princess consort. Otherwise, if they really want to, we won't be able to catch up no matter what we do. The group was very depressed. They followed Xiaoyu and Su Weiji's instructions and split up. At this time, Qin Yining and Xiao Shui were lifted off the carriage and carried away. At this time, Qin Yining had gradually recovered from her panic and calmed down to analyze the situation. Since they had already been captured alive, there was no point in panicking. Right now, the most important thing was to think of a countermeasure. She and Pang Xiao had many enemies. There were also many people who could be targeting her. But this time, the people didn't assassinate her. Instead, they captured her alive. Since they captured her alive, they must have some use for her alive. In the current situation, Qin Yining only wanted to get his hands on the treasure. According to Li Qiqian, the treasure was hidden by Lu Hong. So Li Qiqian must have kidnapped her to threaten Pang Xiao or for other reasons. She hadn't been in the capital for so long, so she didn't know the details. Therefore, Qin Yining suspected that the people who kidnapped her this time were most likely Lu Hong's people. The treasure that Lu Hong was transporting was swapped. Not only did Your Majesty not find it, but Lu Hong also lost everything at the same time. The Lu family was a century-old royal family. It was only a matter of time before they were targeted by Li Qiqian. After such a big thing happened, how could Lu Hong not hate her and Pang Xiao? Qin Yining guessed for a long time and came to the conclusion that the other party was definitely sent by Lu Hong. Qin Yining thought that perhaps it was necessary to curry favor with them. Qin Yining and Xiao Shui couldn't see their surroundings clearly. They could only see the grass and trees around them. She tugged at the hem of her dress with difficulty. However, at this moment, she didn't have the space or opportunity to move her arms. The men carrying Qin Yining and Xiao Shui had walked for half a day and were already very tired. However, after a short while, they slowed down and placed a large net on the ground. Master, fortunately, we didn't disappoint you. The men stepped forward and bowed in unison. Then, Qin Yining heard a voice that she couldn't believe. Release the princess consort. Lu boy. Qin Yining's voice sounded with difficulty. As the rope was released, Qin Yining's nerves became even more tense. Lu boy, what are you trying to do? Lu Hong was dressed in a green robe. He was dressed like an ordinary scholar, but his entire body exuded a noble aura. Lu Hong greedily looked at Qin Yining's every frown, every smile, and every movement. After a long time, he seemed to come back to his senses and said, What am I trying to do? I don't have the capital to do anything. I just want to know if you've been well recently. Chapter 1079. Lu Hong saw that Qin Yining did not say a word. She just sat on the ground and looked at him with a pair of watery eyes. There was too much confusion and disapproval in those eyes that deeply hurt him. His heart felt like it was being stirred by a needle. It hurt so much that Lu Hong couldn't help but clutch his clothes. What's with that look? You don't believe that I'm worried about you? Qin Yining's brows furrowed. She pursed her lips and did not say a word. On the side, Xiao Shui couldn't take it anymore and scolded. Watch your mouth. Don't insult my Wang Fei's reputation. Huh? Lu Heng laughed coldly. He slowly walked in front of her and suddenly slapped Xiao Shui hard across the face. After the crisp slap, Xiao Shui's head was tilted to the side from the slap. She immediately glared at Lu Heng and jumped up. However, the people around Lu Heng were already prepared. There were people on both sides of Xiao Shui's shoulders and pressed her to the ground. Xiao Shui's face was scratched by the pebbles on the ground. It was very painful. Qin Yining couldn't help but bite her lower lip. She knew that she could not speak up for Xiao Shui at this time. If she spoke up for Xiao Shui, it was very likely that Lu Heng would kill Xiao Shui. She could feel that this person was abnormal. Lu Heng looked in surprise at Qin Yining. Don't you always protect your subordinates? Why aren't you speaking up for him? Qin Yining frowned and said, Lu Boy kidnapped me. If you have something to say, just say it. Why beat around the bush? Lu Heng seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world when he heard this. He suddenly threw his head back and laughed so hard that he rocked back and forth. In the end, he pointed at Qin Yining breathlessly. You want me to say it directly? You don't want me to beat around the bush? I was too considerate of you. That's why I beat around the bush. Now that I have nothing left, it's too late for regrets. Lu Heng suddenly stepped forward, grabbed her shoulders, and lifted her up. Your Highness, surnamed Lu, don't you dare be rude. What kind of man are you to bully a weak girl? Xiao Shui struggled madly on the ground, but was firmly suppressed. The wound on Qin Yining's shoulder was pulled, and she sucked in a breath of cold air in pain. Lu Heng did not seem to have seen half of it. His slightly cold and slender hands squeezed her shoulders. Tell me, am I not good enough to you? We used to be close friends who went through thick and thin together. Why do we end up like this? Our Lu clan has been a prominent clan for hundreds of years. Although the Northern Ji country and the imperial court are powerful, our Lu clan can influence their opinions with a single word. For you, I didn't deal with Pang Zhishi ruthlessly. Otherwise, how do you think a bumpkin like him, who came out of nowhere without any foundation, would be able to survive until now? I always thought that there would be at least some affection between them when they met. But how did you treat me? You and Pang Zhishi colluded with each other. You colluded to scheme against me, stole the treasure, and even made me the scapegoat. The Lu clan's 100 years of foundation. Now, the monkeys scatter when the tree falls. Countless people in my Lu clan have been implicated, and I don't know how many of them have been convicted and killed. All of this was caused by you and Pang Zhishi. And you still want me to say it directly? I really want to catch you and Pang Zhishi and chop you into pieces. Lu Heng's voice was not loud. Every sentence was spoken slowly, and his pronunciation was perfect. However, the hand that was holding Qin Yining's shoulder gradually tightened, as if he wanted to crush her bones to temporarily vent his anger. Qin Yining's wound was touched, and the pain made her face turn even uglier. However, she still refused to cry out in pain. I don't know what you're talking about. What treasure? My Wang Yu is implicated because of your treasure. Now that you're thinking of ways to catch me and ask about the whereabouts of the treasure, your plan will only fail. You might as well investigate your subordinates and think of a way to avoid your Majesty's pursuit. Even now, you're still trying to sow discord between my subordinates and me. Lu Heng was unable to restrain his anger as he shook Qin Yining fiercely. Don't tell me you don't care. You really don't feel my feelings for you at all. Even now, you're still saying such things. I really should kill you. Qin Yining was dizzy from being shaken, and the wound on her shoulder started to bleed again. She was in so much pain that her face turned pale and her brows were tightly knitted together. Lu Heng looked at her face that was gradually showing signs of pain, but was becoming more and more beautiful. For a moment, he loved and hated her. He fiercely pressed her into his arms and forcefully dragged her a few steps to the side. After an intense internal struggle, he let go of her and continued to hold her shoulder, looking at her with a burning gaze. Tell me, where exactly did you and Pang Zhishi hide the treasure? As long as you tell me, I'll write off everything that happened in the past. I'll pretend that we're still the same as before, and I'll forget that you schemed against me. In the future, I'll treat you well. As long as you stay by my side with peace of mind, I won't be as useless as Pang Jishi, causing you to lose your family and everything. As long as you follow me, I'll only give you happiness. Tell me quickly. Qin Yining bit her lower lip, and her eyes were filled with contempt. Ignoring the pain in her shoulder, she raised her arm and flung Lu Heng's hand away. You're the one who lost the treasure, so is it that difficult to admit that you weren't careful enough? How can you be so sure that this matter has something to do with me? Now that you're asking me, do you think that you can find the treasure? As for what you said about giving me happiness and wanting me to follow you, you're simply dreaming. Qin Yining raised her finger and pointed at Lu Heng. In the past, I thought that you were a responsible and elegant gentleman who acted appropriately, but now, you've completely changed. You're spouting nonsense to slander me. Every time you open your mouth, you'll say such overstepping words. You're even from an aristocratic family. Pooh! Lu Heng was spat at. He looked at Qin Yining in disbelief, and his gaze gradually turned from scorching to mocking. Ha ha! Lu Heng laughed maniacally. Well said, well said. It's my wishful thinking. I shouldn't have any feelings for you. I shouldn't have valued you more than the family's integrity and interests. But now that things have come to this, what can I do? He sounded like he was asking Qin Yining, but more than that, he was asking himself. Recently, the Lu family had been uprooted. Although he had escaped with the main forces, bad news about the Lu family came every day, and he was on the verge of breaking down. Perhaps it was right that his grandfather didn't want to pass the position of the head of the family to him. Did he expect that the Lu family would be destroyed at his hands? But he had fought for the position of the head of the family. But he had pushed the Lu family to the brink of destruction. Self-blame and regret tormented him every day. Lu Heng felt that he was already at the end of the road, but things were chasing him from behind, so he had no choice but to persevere. He thought about it carefully. What was left of him? What he wanted, power, status, the prosperity of the family, and the woman he loved were all gradually leaving him. Lu Heng's gaze was too frightening. Qin Yining's entire body tensed up like a small animal that had encountered danger. Noticing Qin Yining's actions, Lu Heng's self-deprecating heart grew even more. He didn't want to let her off so easily because of his love for her. Men. Lu Heng stood with his hands behind his back. His back was straight, and his face was solemn. Master, I'll leave this woman to you. Use all means possible to make her reveal the whereabouts of the treasure. Yes. Chapter 1080. Lu Heng's decision surprised Qin Yining. But on second thought, Lu Heng and Pang Xiao were enemies to begin with. It was reasonable for him to capture her and interrogate her about the whereabouts of the treasure. Qin Yining was not disappointed. In the past, she was still friends with Lu Heng. But now that they were on opposite sides and Lu Heng's feelings for her were gradually revealed, Qin Yining knew very well that the relationship between her and Lu Heng could not be the same as before. Seeing that the men were about to reach her, Qin Yining knew that she could not escape. Although she was afraid and her palms were sweating, she knew what she had to do. Perhaps when she gradually fell into a struggle, she had already mentally prepared herself. When she was kidnapped to the Titan, she had already told herself that anything could happen in the future. She was different from ordinary women. The position she was in did not allow her to show any weakness. The men arrived in front of her and pushed Qin Yining into the woods. Xiao Shue's eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. She shouted angrily, "Let her go. You're a bunch of cowards, cowards. What kind of man are you to bully a weak woman? If you have the guts, come at me." Lu Heng watched Qin Yining's back as she was pushed away. He was distraught. His fist clenched his robe so tightly that the veins on his fists were bulging. He had made a decision in a fit of anger. But why did he feel a piercing pain in his heart? Xiao Shue's scolding was right next to his ear. Lu Heng became more and more irritated. He angrily kicked Xiao Shue's shoulder. "Shut up." Xiao Shue flipped over from the kick. But she kept cursing, "Coward, you ball-ass piece of trash. You bullied a weak woman, and you still have the nerve to talk about your feelings. Don't disgust me. Lu Heng gritted his teeth. His eyes were wide open in anger. His blood was boiling. His limbs, bones, and even the back of his head felt like they were burning. Shut up. Shut up. Lu Heng kicked Xiao Shui's chest and abdomen. Xiao Shui hurriedly bent her body to dodge, but she didn't stop cursing. His voice echoed in the forest. Lu Heng's anger, which had been suppressed for many days, exploded at this moment. He kicked, beat, and cursed back. The scene was a mess, and almost no sound could be heard from the forest. At this moment, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. A crisp paw sound was heard. The moment Lu Heng lowered his head, the guard standing behind him fell to the ground while clutching his chest and spitting out a mouthful of blood. If Lu Heng had not suddenly lowered his head, the one who would have fallen would be him. Quick, protect the patriarch. Ambush. It's from a forest. There's an ambush in the woods. The sound of the bullets piercing through the air could be heard. Although they were bullets, their lethality was no less than that of a crossbow. Lu Heng's attendants protected him as they dodged left and right. Everyone was hit by a lot of bullets. Some of the bullets that hit their arms could even break their bones. For a moment, Lu Heng was surrounded by groans and cries of pain. Lu Heng gritted his teeth and roared, "Who's there? Come out!" The bullets finally stopped flying. Lu Heng had just breathed a sigh of relief when he heard rustling sounds in the forest. It was the sound of footsteps, and there were quite a few of them. In the blink of an eye, more than 100 guards rushed over. The dozens of people in the lead were holding slingshots. It was Ji Dashun and the others. Qin Yining followed behind them under the protection of Jing Zhe and Ji Yun. The people who had escorted Qin Yining into the forest were nowhere to be seen. They had obviously been captured. I didn't expect the great Zheng Yibo to do such a despicable thing, Su Weiji mocked. I'm sure no one in your residence knows about Lu Boi's actions, right? The guards around Lu Heng were all tense and ready for battle. They seemed to know their limits after comparing their strength with the other parties. Lu Heng could also see that although the other party didn't have a lot of people, the guards were all well trained. His men might not be a match for them in a direct confrontation. Hearing Su Weiji's mockery, Lu Heng suppressed his anger and smiled. So what if you know about this? So what if you don't know about it? Do you know that I'm still the head of the Lu family? You can see how despicable my actions are. It's enough that the people around me understand. Why should I explain myself to you? Huh. Lu Boi's shamelessness is top-notch. If you were the same in your actions, TSK. Say you hadn't finished speaking when the surrounding crowd roared with laughter. Lu Heng was annoyed, but the disparity in strength was too great. He didn't have the ability to compete, so he could only endure and find an opportunity to leave this place. He definitely couldn't throw an egg or rock. Xiaoyu and Su Weiji's conversation had already angered Lu Heng so much that his expression turned ugly. But even so, it wasn't enough to quell their anger. If they had arrived a moment later, wouldn't the princess consort have? They were ordered to follow the princess consort and protect the princess consort's safety. But if something happened to the princess consort under their watch, how could they face Wang Yi in the future? Aren't your twisted words and twisted logic top-notch? Lu Heng sneered. If Pang Zhishi hadn't colluded with the Qin clan couple, pocketed the treasure for themselves, and then turned around to bite me, your Majesty wouldn't have treated the Lu family like this. How could he not take revenge for the extermination of his clan? Ha ha ha. Xiaoyu laughed loudly. Lu Boi, do you think I'm a fool? The Lu family's extermination was also the result of deceiving the emperor. You hid the treasure, and now you're making a false accusation that it was Wang Yi and the princess consort's handiwork. You did it yourself, but you pushed the blame to others. You're too responsible. Lu Heng gritted his teeth. Lu Heng's attendant whispered, Master, don't fall into their trap. The other party is probably waiting for a large number of people to arrive. Let's leave quickly. Otherwise, once their reinforcements arrive, it'll be harder for us to escape. Lu Heng's heart quivered. His anger and resentment were instantly suppressed, and he quickly came to his senses. If he didn't take them away now, Was he going to wait for a large number of people to arrive and be unable to escape? After making up his mind, Lu Heng quickly turned around and made a hand gesture. The guards beside him got into position and held their weapons. They glared fiercely at Qin Yining. Qin Yining looked at Lu Heng expressionlessly. Lu Heng also looked at Qin Yining as he retreated. Qin Yining's heart didn't waver, but Lu Heng's heart was filled with sorrow. It seemed like his decision today had completely offended her. There was no need for him to have any unrealistic fantasies about Qin Yining anymore. This woman didn't care about him at all. Now, she hated him even more. Lu Heng gritted his teeth and turned around to instruct his men to escort them. The group turned around and ran. Jinghu Wei and the guards beside Qin Yining wanted to chase after them. However, Qin Yining grabbed Ji Da-sun, who was beside him. "Don't chase a cornered enemy," Ji Da-sun said regretfully. "If we don't give up, this subordinate will definitely be able to capture him alive for you." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Why would I capture him? He's still very useful to me." Although Ji Da-sun and the people around him didn't understand what Qin Yining meant, they understood and rejoiced in their hearts. Fortunately, Qin Yining was their princess consort. If it was someone else, Lu Heng would probably be fuming with anger. Chapter 1081. Jingzhi bowed his head in acknowledgement, then looked at Qin Yining with a complicated expression. He wanted to say something, but hesitated. Qin Yining noticed his strange expression and asked in confusion, "What's wrong?" Jingzhi said, "Master, you should take care of your injuries first and take a good rest." They, who had followed Qin Yining closely, saw how she was kidnapped and injured with their own eyes. Even though she was frightened, she didn't seem to be afraid at all and was able to react immediately. Although this kind of meticulous and strong attitude made them feel at ease, it still made them feel sorry for her. Qin Yining smiled sweetly and said, "Thank you for your kindness. I'll go rest in a bit." Jingzhi acknowledged and turned to follow Qin Yining's instructions. Qin Yining walked back to the camp with the rest of the people. Xiaoyu said, "As expected, Princess Consort is very meticulous. When we returned, we didn't gather all of our bodyguards and manpower together. This time it really worked. Our reinforcements came just in time. Otherwise, if we brought our original bodyguards, I'm afraid we wouldn't be Lu Heng's match." Qin Yining had left some people on the deserted island to guard the treasure and the ship. She didn't dare to bring Peng Zhao's group of more than 1,000 people back. Therefore, she divided them into several groups and spread them out. Although they were all heading to the capital, they took different routes. As for Qin Yining, in order to avoid attracting attention, she didn't bring many people with her. In this way, she could preserve Peng Zhao's strength and prevent others from finding out about her background. This also allowed those who had been watching her for a long time to lower their guard. For example, Lu Heng dared to kidnap her in front of Qin Yining today because he saw that Qin Yining's subordinates were limited and he didn't bring many people with him. If Qin Yining had revealed his background from the beginning, Lu Heng might have brought more people with him and they wouldn't have been able to escape so easily today. Qin Yining smiled bitterly and said, "How could I have thought of this? I just made some preparations. Fortunately, the heavens protected me and I didn't really cause any trouble." Everyone was speechless. She had been kidnapped and injured, and she had almost been... Was this not a big deal in Qin Yining's eyes? It could only be said that the princess's heart was strong enough. Qin Yining and Xiaoyu chatted for a while before returning to the tent. Ji Yun came in with medicine and carefully applied it on Qin Yining. "Wang Fei, how do you feel?" Seeing that Qin Yining was somewhat silent, Ji Yun deliberated and asked. Qin Yining smiled and said, "It's okay. I've applied some medicine and the wound will heal in a few days." Ji Yun lowered her eyes and shook her head. "This servant is not talking about your wound. This was a superficial wound. No matter how serious the injury was, it could still be treated with medicine. But the discomfort in your heart is not something that can be cured with some medicine." Qin Yining smiled and said, "When did you learn to speak like this? I didn't do anything. It was just a false alarm. I was just thinking about the chaotic situation in the world today." Ji Yun sighed and said, "Wang Fei, You should think more about yourself. Next time, you must ask Wang Yi to arrange more people for you. You must not suffer such a thing again. If it happened once or twice, this servant would be scared out of her wits, let alone you personally experiencing it. Qin Yining chuckled. I know you're worried about me. She patted Ji Yun's hand and said with a smile, Don't worry. I won't be so unlucky all the time. Everything will happen to me. Ji Yun lowered her eyes and muttered, Wang Fei, don't tell me you haven't encountered enough? You're walking on the edge of a knife every time. If you're not careful, you might lose your life. Wang Yi is really too much. He always puts you in danger. I'll be careful in the future. Qin Yining knew that Ji Yun was really concerned about her. She pulled her to sit down and said, You've been by my side every time these few times. I've implicated you and caused you to suffer a lot. Ji Yun said, Wang Fei, you're being unkind by saying this. Besides, I haven't been of much help to you. I could only watch as you were taken away several times, but I couldn't do anything. If I get the chance later, I must properly acknowledge another master and learn martial arts. Otherwise, it's really too painful to be unable to do anything. Qin Yining smiled and nodded. Actually, if Ji Yun was already like this, she could imagine how Pang Xiao would feel if he knew the news. Fortunately, she had already returned to the capital, and the time to meet Pang Xiao was closer. Qin Yining changed into a new set of clothes and fell asleep tiredly. In the entire camp, everyone was on high alert. The next morning, Ji Yun jogged into the tent and said, Wang Fei, Jingzhou is back. He even brought someone with him. Qin Yining was holding a mirror to see if the hairpin on the back of her head had slipped off. When she heard this, she immediately put down the mirror. Who did he bring back? Jingzhou had a sense of propriety. He wouldn't bring someone with him for no reason. Something must have happened in the city, or perhaps Pang Xiao had some orders. With Pang Xiao's personality, since he knew that she was back, Pang Xiao would definitely rush out to welcome her. Could it be that something happened in the city these few days? Qin Yining wasn't in the mood to continue dressing up. She quickly walked out with Ji Yun to welcome her. This subordinate, Zhu Yu, greets Wang Fei. Qin Yining saw that this person looked very familiar. She often followed Pang Xiao around. Although she couldn't call out everyone's names, she knew that this person was one of them. Wang Fei, this subordinate personally came here because of Wang Ye's orders. Oh, Qin Yining raised her eyebrows in confusion. What orders does Wang Yi have? Wang Fei, Wang Yi said that now is not the right time for you to return to the capital. You shouldn't come back for the time being, in case you encounter danger and can't leave. Qin Yining pursed her lips. After a moment, she asked, What happened in the city? Why do you and Wang Yi both think that there's danger in the city? Zhu Yi was stumped by this question. He racked his brains and had a bitter expression. He knew that Wang Yi ordered Wang Fei not to enter the city because he was afraid that she would encounter danger. He could only follow Wang Ye's intentions and say, The situation in the city is not bad. Natural and man-made disasters are unavoidable. Many people have lost their homes and rushed to the capital. The city is very chaotic right now. If Wang Fei goes back now, you will encounter trouble. You might even encounter unexpected danger. It's better to wait for things to calm down before Wang Fei comes back. Zhu Yu said this very slowly. It was as though he was thinking as he spoke. Qin Yining narrowed her eyes and sized up Zhu Yu. In the past, Tao Han's Han had ordered people to assassinate her. Qin Yining could no longer completely trust Pang Xiao's subordinates. This Zhu Yu was stuttering and was trying his best to persuade her not to return to the capital. Qin Yining felt that there must be a trap. Also, Pang Xiao was still in the city. She didn't know if he encountered danger. Qin Yining said, I understand your good intentions. But since the situation in the city is not bad and I have so many subordinates to protect me, there will be few chances of encountering trouble. You don't need to worry about this. Seeing that Qin Yining was determined to enter the city, Zhu Yu became even more anxious. Wang Fei, it's better if you wait outside for news. This is Wang Ye's idea. Chapter 1082. Zhu Yu knew that Wang Fei was a powerful woman. Even though she looked soft and weak, her personality was very strong. In the past, he had only heard of it and had never personally experienced it. Now that he saw it, he understood that when a woman was strong, she would not lose to a man. Wang Fei, please calm your anger. Zhu Yu carefully bowed and said, this subordinate does not have any other meaning. This subordinate is just following Wang Ye's orders and is passing on Wang Ye's message. I only know what has happened in the city. Wang Yi is fine and is in the Fu. He must have something important to do, so he had Wang Fei wait? Or is there something else in the city that this subordinate does not know of? Qin Yining looked Zhu Yu up and down. His lips curled in a faint smile. It seems that you are not willing to tell me the truth. Qin Yining's tone was warm, and he was still smiling, but Zhu Yu's hair stood on end. Su Weiji and Xie Yu had been waiting outside the tent for a long time. Hearing the situation inside, they hurried in to mediate. Why do you have to make Wang Fei unhappy? Wang Yi and Wang Fei are deeply in love. There is nothing that cannot be said in front of Wang Fei. Yes, Wang Yi has orders. You can just follow his orders and pass on the message. Wang Fei asks, you should answer what needs to be answered. Su Weiji and Xie Yu each said a sentence. Even though they did not say much, it was enough for Zhu Yu to understand. The phrase, deeply in love, was enough for him to understand that if he offended Wang Fei now, he would not have comfortable days in front of Wang Yi in the future. Moreover, even if he didn't say anything about Wang Ye's matter, Wang Fei was already in front of the city gates. She could arrange for someone to enter the city and ask around. The reason why Wang Yi hid it from Wang Fei was probably because he wanted to save face, right? After thinking this through, Zhu Yu finally lowered his head and bowed. He said in a low voice, Wang Fei, please calm your anger. It is not that this subordinate wants to deceive Wang Fei, but this subordinate cannot disobey Wang Ye's orders. In reality, Wang Yi is slightly injured. He was afraid that Wang Fei would be worried when she saw him. So he told this subordinate to tell you that now is not the best time to enter the city. In reality, the city is in a state of panic right now. This subordinate's report is not false. Now, starving people were everywhere. Those who were close to the capital were heading towards the capital. Those who were further away had already gathered together to besiege the large cities in the various regions. Everyone was only doing it for a mouthful of food and to survive. At this point, Zhu Yu's expression grew even more solemn. Her eyes were filled with anger. Your Majesty's actions are becoming more and more unseemly. Before he returned to the capital, he gave Wang Yi a beating. The treasure was clearly hidden by Lu Heng, but Your Majesty insisted that Wang Yi had done it. Qin Yining and Xie Yu knew that Zhu Yu did not know the inside story. They did not speak and only listened to Zhu Yu speak in detail. Later, when he returned to the city gates, Your Majesty went out with great fanfare, but did not find the treasure. Perhaps he felt that he had lost face. Wang Yi kindly gave an idea. Your Majesty found an excuse to go out incognito to inspect the imperial mausoleum. He looked good on the surface. However, the officials welcomed Your Majesty back to the capital. They thought that Your Majesty would at least consider the situation of the disaster. Your Majesty was still focused on the treasure and the construction of the imperial mausoleum. He did not consider the current situation of the common people at all. Wang Yi advised him many times, but Your Majesty rejected all of them. There was also one time when Wang Yi tried to persuade Your Majesty and was even reprimanded by Your Majesty. He said that Wang Yi had overstepped his bounds, and could it be that you are better at being an emperor than I am? These words were not heard by just one person. After this subordinate heard it, I felt that Wang Yi had been wronged. Zhu Yu touched his face and said, thinking about it, Your Majesty already held a grudge against Wang Yi for overstepping his bounds. In recent days, the situation of the disaster has gradually worsened. The common people all over the country have lost their homes. Every day, countless common people starve to death. The imperial court has no money, so they can't provide relief. The common people can't see any hope. Many of the people in the various prefectures have gathered to cause trouble. Some of them have become bandits. When Your Majesty saw this situation, he finally paid attention to this matter. Last month, He arrested many officials who were dispatched to other places and charged them with the crime of failing to control the situation. A few days ago, there was a county near the old capital of Yin called Yang County. The common people were so hungry that they had no way to survive. Some people gathered to cause trouble and spread the word of rebellion against the imperial court. They cursed your majesty for being incompetent. Somehow, these words reached your majesty's ears. Your majesty immediately interrogated the local county magistrate, Li, and even implicated the magistrate of the old capital, Lord Gong. Qin Yining was stunned. Are you talking about Lord Gongzhong Tong? Yes. Does Princess Consort know of this person? Qin Yining nodded. That year, when the Earth Dragon overturned the situation, Wang Yi and I went to the old capital to provide disaster relief. I worked with both Lord Gong and County Magistrate Li. These two people have noble characters and wholeheartedly serve the common people. How did your majesty punish them for their crimes? When Zhu Yu heard this, she said angrily, "You don't know. County Magistrate Li had already been executed. Your majesty still wanted to kill Magistrate Gong." Wang Yi stood out to mediate. It wasn't easy for your majesty to calm down. However, later on, news came from the old capital. It said that the common people had besieged the government office in the old capital, causing many officials to die. The old capital of the Yin dynasty has always been a sensitive place. Your majesty felt that the locals had rebellious intentions, so he interrogated Magistrate Gong again. He even wanted to arrest all of Magistrate Gong's family members in the capital. Wang Yi once again pleaded for mercy from Magistrate Gong during the court assembly. Your majesty was furious. He quarreled with Wang Yi in the court assembly and reprimanded Wang Yi for having disloyal intentions. In the court assembly, he gave Wang Yi 50 beatings with a plank in front of all the civil and military officials. Magistrate Gong and his family members weren't spared either. Magistrate Gong was sentenced to be beheaded, and all the women and his family members were to be made into government prostitutes. All the men over the age of 14 were to be beheaded, and all the men under the age of 14 were to be exiled to the cold north, never to return to the capital. Zhu Yu's words infuriated everyone to no end. Qin Yining was seething with anger. Your majesty actually ordered people to flog Wang Yi again. Yes. Zhu Yu lowered his head and said helplessly and angrily, last time, he was already flogged 20 times. Before his injuries recovered, he was flogged 50 times again. Wang Yi is now recuperating in his residence. There are still refugees coming into the city, so it's very chaotic inside and outside. That was why Pang Xiao didn't want Qin Yining to enter the city now. Firstly, she was worried that your majesty was still angry. If she returned, your majesty would punish her. Secondly, after being flogged 50 times, Pang Zhao's buttocks would be a horrible sight. The dignified Prince Zhongshan, who was revered as the god of war by the military, was flogged and had to lie in bed all day to recuperate. Qin Yining had never seen him in such a sorry state. Pang Xiao also didn't want Qin Yining to see it. When Qin Yining thought of Pang Xiao being flogged in front of the court, he was already burning with anger. Li Qitian didn't hit Pang Zhao's body. He hit his face. Chapter 1083. Qin Yining couldn't imagine how embarrassed Pang Xiao must have been at that time. Whether it was in the eyes of his opponents or his subordinates, Pang Zhao's confidence and dignity would have been crushed by this beating. That was why Pang Xiao stopped her from returning to the capital. No wonder he didn't come out to greet her like before. He was injured. Qin Yining's anger burned into flames, almost burning away his rationality. Qin Yining wished he could strangle Li Qitian to death on the spot. Was he worthy of being the emperor? Was he worthy of being a human? He didn't have any loyalty, filial piety, benevolence, or righteousness. All he cared about was the small profits in front of him and didn't care about the lives of the common people. Not only was he narrow-minded and jealous of loyal officials, but he was also an ungrateful villain. Even the heavens couldn't stand this kind of person being the emperor's father. If he didn't kill this kind of person, how could he relieve the hatred in his heart? When everyone saw Qin Yining's expression change, they didn't know how to console him. Because it wasn't only Qin Yining who was angry. Everyone else found it hard to control their emotions. They really didn't know if Wang Ye's bravery in fighting enemies for the sake of establishing the dynasty and putting an end to the chaos was worth it. Princess. Zhu was a bit nervous. After all, Pang Xiao didn't allow him to say these words. However, he couldn't control himself and said in front of Qin Yining. Qin Yining took a few deep breaths and calmed himself down with great difficulty. He softened his tone and said, "You can't be blamed for this. You don't need to be nervous." Zhu Yu asked hesitantly, "Then does Princess plan to enter the capital now?" If Qin Yining entered the capital now, he wouldn't be able to do his job well. Qin Yining was very smart and immediately understood Zhu Yu's concerns. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't make things difficult for you." Zhu Yu was a bit embarrassed when he heard this. He scratched the back of his head and said, "This subordinate didn't mean that." Qin Yining smiled and said, "I know. You can go back. If Wang Yi asks, just say that you've already passed the message to me. I'm not in a hurry to enter the city. For the time being, I'll stay in the vicinity and observe for a while. When the time is right, we'll talk again." Zhu Yu was overjoyed and hurriedly cupped his hands in greeting. "Many thanks to Wang Fei. Then this subordinate will take his leave." All right, the situation on Wang Ye's side is not optimistic. I hope that all of you will continue to be as loyal as before. I will not treat you unfairly in the future. What are you saying, Your Highness? Zhu Yu was overjoyed and said honestly, Wang Yi has treated his brothers well. Also, we are only willing to follow Wang Yi because we admire Wang Ye's character and conduct. We don't have any ulterior motives. Wang Fei, please don't be like this. Qin Yining nodded with a smile and said something to Zhu Yu before letting them go. After they left, Xie Yu, Su Weiji, Jing Zhe, Liao Zhibing, and Jian all looked at Qin Yining nervously. It was as if they were afraid that Qin Yining would do something extreme in a fit of anger. Qin Yining sat at the head of the table and fell into deep thought with his eyes lowered. After a long time, Qin Yining raised his head and said, "I plan to go to Huichuan County." Su Weiji was surprised. "Wang Fei, are you going to Huichuan County for something urgent?" "Of course." Qin Yining stood up. When he paced back and forth, his skirt rippled like waves. "Don't tell me that I'm going to be humiliated like this for no reason." She didn't finish her sentence, but everyone understood what she meant. Everyone was speechless. Xie Yu's mind raced. "Wang Fei, don't tell me you." Qin Yining turned around. Her watery eyes were burning with anger, and her gaze was brighter than usual. "Whoever dares to touch him, I will do the same. It's too difficult to assassinate the emperor. Doesn't he care about the imperial mausoleum? Doesn't he care about the lives of the commoners and collect money to build the imperial mausoleum? I'll make sure he doesn't have a mausoleum to live in." "Wang Fei, please reconsider." "I've already reconsidered. If I can tolerate this, what else can I tolerate? Wang Yi is a gentleman, but I'm not. He wholeheartedly wants to have a mausoleum to live in after he dies. Not only will I make sure he doesn't have one, I'll also send him to his grave earlier." Everyone was speechless again. They didn't know what to say to persuade her. Jing Zhe and Liao Zhibing stood up at the same time and said hot-bloodedly, "Good. Well said." Liao Zhibing said, "Alliance Master is right. The current emperor is becoming more and more like an incapable ruler. Such a despicable person doesn't deserve Wang Ye's loyalty." She had also failed to live up to the prince's expectations. "We, the brothers of the Qingtian Alliance, have always been loyal to each other. If the brothers of the Alliance knew that the prince had encountered such a tragedy, they would be furious. It is possible that they would set fire to the imperial palace. The princess consort was already merciful by only destroying the imperial mausoleum." Su Weiji and Xie Yu felt a headache coming on. "Mr. Liao, Wang Fei is just angry. Please don't add fuel to the fire." "That's right. Mr. Liao, it's not too late to let Wang Fei calm down before making a decision. Destroying the imperial mausoleum is treason. It was an unpardonable crime during the 8 deliberations. Wang Yi and Wang Fei are both good people. Originally, It was others who let Wang Yi and Wang Fei down. If they do this, the ones in the wrong will be Wang Yi and Wang Fei. Wang Fei, please reconsider. If this treason is caught, Wang Yi will also be labeled as a treason. His reputation will be ruined. Xie Yu and Su Weiji advised earnestly. After all, Qin Yining had always worked hard to build a reputation for Pang Xiao. He had always prioritized Pang Xiao's reputation. If this matter were to be exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Qin Yining smiled and said, I understand your concerns, gentlemen. So this time, I don't plan to let Wang Yi's people participate. Even if something were to happen, it would be my problem alone. Husband and wife are one. No one would believe you if you said you didn't participate. No, Wang Yi and I aren't an ordinary couple. Other wives might use their husband's family's abilities, but I don't. I have the Silver Masked Spy and Qin Tian Alliance. I can do what I want to take responsibility for what I do. Even when your majesty was buried in the underground palace and helped him take back the imperial palace, I used Qin Tian Alliance's abilities. Your majesty also knows that I have this ability. Xie Yu and Su Weiji were speechless for a moment. Indeed, it was as Qin Yining said. If she wanted to do something, she didn't need other people's help. She could do it herself. She could also take responsibility for her own actions, because her Qin Tian Alliance was only a formality in front of your majesty. In a moment, I will set off with my people. You two, Jinghu Wei, and the Wang Estate's guards will stay outside the city for the time being. It's best for the Wang Estate's guards to scatter and not gather in one place. This is to prevent people from finding out and accusing Wang Yi of treason. Wait for the news from the prince in the city, then you can enter the city. Qin Yining gently instructed. Xie Yu shook her head. Princess consort, if Wang Yi asks about you, how are we going to explain it? Please reconsider. Don't worry. If Wang Yi asks, you can just tell him the truth. If I don't vent my anger, I'm afraid I won't be able to sleep well in the future. There's no reason for him to care if I vent my anger or not. Xie Yu and Su Weiji were speechless. Chapter 1084. Qin Yining had already made up his mind. Xie Yu and Su Weiji tried their best to persuade him, but to no avail. They could only withdraw worriedly. Ji Yun hesitantly persuaded. Wang Fei, in fact, what Sir Xie and Sir Su said is reasonable. If something happens, your majesty will have a reason to investigate Wang Yi. It's not good. I'm also clear about this point. Qin Yining slowly sat down. His posture was elegant. He lowered his long eyelashes and muttered. So this time, we must be careful. We can't let anyone have a hold on us. Fortunately, the brothers of the Qin Tian Alliance are better at doing this kind of thing than the guards of the Wang Fu. It won't be too difficult. Thinking about what the Qin Tian Alliance did, Ji Yun couldn't help but nod. Although she was worried about Qin Yining's actions, Ji Yun's thoughts were much simpler than Xie Yu and Su Weiji's. As long as the Wang Fei made a decision, she, as the personal maidservant, only needed to follow her loyally. Qin Yining let Liao Zhibing and Jing should prepare to set off. But that night, Qin Yining couldn't sleep at all. Separated by the city gate, she and Pang Xiao seemed to be in two different worlds. Pang Xiao might also be in so much pain that he couldn't sleep. He might also be having a high fever because of his wound. She was already so angry. When Pang Xiao was beaten with a plank, he must have been even more angry and desperate, right? With this thought in mind, she let her imagination run wild for an entire night. The next morning, when the sky turned bright, she finally fell asleep because she was really tired. Jing Zhe and Liao Zhibing didn't dare to delay Qin Yining's business. They chose reliable candidates to go with Qin Yining to Huichuan. Ji Yun was still outside the tent, trying to stop them in a low voice, saying, the Wang Fei just fell asleep not long ago. The two of them also planned to withdraw for the time being. Who would have thought that in his light sleep? Qin Yining's hearing was astonishing. He immediately saw them. Wang Fei will be bringing along 4 silver masked spies on this trip. Ji Yun will also be coming along. She can serve you personally. Liao Zhibing said. Jing Zhe also said, Mr. Liao and Meng Qin will definitely go. In addition, Mr. Liao has also chosen 2 other brothers from the Qingtian alliance who are strong and agile. Quality is more important than quantity. There will be a total of 8 bodyguards and 1 maidservant. Princess, do you think this is feasible? Qin Yining smiled and nodded. You've arranged everything very well. I originally planned to act in secret and didn't want to make a big fuss about it. This is perfect. Since it was decided, Qin Yining went to inform Xie Yu and Su Weiji. The 2 were worried, but there was nothing they could do. They only thought that when Wang Yi sent a message, they had to first tell Wang Yi what Wang Fei wanted to do. After everything was prepared, Qin Yining boarded the carriage and set off with the 8 bodyguards and 1 maidservant. At the same time in the Wang Fu, Pang Zhao's fever had not subsided last night. He tossed and turned for half the night before feeling slightly better. He did not sleep well. As soon as he opened his eyes, he immediately ordered someone to call Zhu Yu over. Did you see Wang Fei yesterday? Pang Zhao lay on the bed and turned his head to examine Zhu Yu's expression. Zhu Yu raised his hands and bowed, replying to Wang Yi, I have already seen her. Wang Fei is currently stationed outside the city. What does their situation look like? Wang Fei is stationed outside the city with the bodyguards. This subordinate found out after asking that Wang Fei encountered many refugees along the way. She was even intercepted once on the way. However, this subordinate did not find out the specifics. Thinking about it, Wang Fei seems to be safe and sound. Then the intercepting matter is not considered serious. Pang Zhao's handsome face was slightly pale and tired because of the repeated injuries. Hearing this, his brows couldn't help but furrow. Since I can tell you about the intercepting, then it is not a minor matter. After thinking for a while, Pang Zhao cleared his hoarse throat and called Tang Xiu, who was beside him. Go out of the city and ask Mr. Xie or Mr. Su to come back for questioning. Also, send more people to protect the princess consort's camp. Tang Xiu nodded with a serious expression. Yes, this subordinate will do it immediately. Pang Zhao thought and then ordered, if Wang Fei asks, do not reveal my injuries. Just say that because the number of refugees in the city is increasing day by day, Your Majesty has ordered people to purge the refugees. Many people have been forced to hide, and some have become bandits. When the situation in the city stabilizes, I will go personally to receive her. Yes, this subordinate understands. Tang Xiu nodded and was about to leave. Zhu Yu saw Pang Zhao give such orders and couldn't help but feel guilty. Wang Yi trusted him so much, but he had revealed the matter that Wang Yi did not plan to tell Wang Fei. Now that he thought about it, it was strange why he had been so afraid of Wang Fei at the time. Thinking of this, Zhu Yu knelt down with a thump. Wang Yi, this subordinate has done wrong. Please punish me, Wang Yi. Pang Zhao raised an eyebrow. Oh, what is it? Zhu Yu's head was bowed. With a troubled expression, he recounted what had happened after he had seen Qin Yining. In the end, he said, this subordinate does not know what happened. Even though this subordinate knew to follow Wang Ye's orders, when Wang Fei glared at this subordinate felt afraid and did not know why I spoke the truth. Please punish me severely, Wang Yi. Pang Zhao half propped himself up when he heard this. He was both angry and amused. His darling could glare at a valiant person like Zhu Yu until he spoke the truth. How powerful and cute was that? When Pang Zhao thought of Qin Yining's appearance, his heart would soften. He said helplessly, all right, stand up. You can't be blamed for this. Zhu Yu stood in shame. He bowed his head and did not speak. Pang Zhao said, this king did not think thoroughly. He should have expected that with her intelligence and courage, she would have sensed something. Even if he did not say it, she would have investigated the situation in the city. It is not a secret that this king has been beaten. She will quickly know. Yes, Wang Yi, you do not know. At the time, Wang Fei's heart ached so much for Wang Yi that her eyes turned red. Zhu Yu shook his head and said, Wang Fei was really angry. This subordinate was very panicked when I saw this. Pang Zhao smiled. Thinking of Qin Yining's temper, he sighed and said, all right. Since it is like this, Tang Xiu, take people out of the city to bring Wang Fei's group back. Remember to avoid being seen on the road. Think of a way to not attract the attention of any party. Tang Xiu nodded in response. Before leaving, she waved a fist at Zhu Yu. Her meaning was that Zhu Yu did not do a good job, and she would teach him a lesson later. Zhu Yu shrunk his neck in fright. The feeling of being threatened by his superior was not good. Pang Xiao rubbed his unshaven chin and said with a sigh, "Come, serve this king to wash up." Even if he was wounded and had a sickly appearance, he would be the most handsome and powerful person in his illness. However, just as Pang Xiao finished preparing, and even ordered people to change the bedding to one that had a faint scent of mint, Tang Xiu came back with Xie Yu and Su Weiji with an anxious expression. What happened? Pang Xiao saw them like this and propped himself up in shock. Where is Sister Yi? Chapter 1085. Why is she going to Huichuan County? Pang Xiao was stunned. Xie Yu looked left and right. Seeing that there were no outsiders around, he said in a low voice, "Wang Fei heard that you were flogged by His Majesty and was unable to restrain her anger. No matter what, she wants to get revenge for you." Yes, Princess Consort said that she was going to destroy the Imperial Mausoleum. Su Weiji lowered his voice even more. If the walls had ears, saying such rebellious words in the capital would become evidence of Pang Xiao's treason. Pang Xiao was silent for a moment. She wanted to avenge me? Yes. Xie Yu and Su Weiji both nodded and carefully observed Pang Xiao's expression. The two of them couldn't figure out Pang Xiao's thoughts. Why didn't they see the worry and anger that they expected? Even if Wang Yi didn't panic, he should at least be a little shocked, right? But they didn't know that at this moment, Pang Xiao felt as if his heart was wrapped in warm water. The depression that had accumulated over the past few days had disappeared. This was the woman he loved. For him, she could do anything. He had a feeling that he was valued and cherished. For so many years, he had always been tough and relied on. He was like a mountain, steady and reliable. But very few people cared about whether this mountain really didn't know fatigue or whether he had a weak side in his heart. Only when he was with Qin Yining could he let down his guard and feel that he also had a backing and that he could rely on others. Even if Qin Yining was a weak woman that he always wanted to protect under his wings, at certain moments, she would suddenly give him a sense of reliance. "Wang Yi, what do you think should be done?" So you couldn't hold back and said anxiously, "This is a serious matter. If we don't handle it well, Wang Ye's reputation will fall to the bottom." Wang Yi was a straightforward and upright person. He had been steady in his actions for many years and had always left a good impression in the hearts of the common people. He had also established an image of loyalty and patriotism in the hearts of the officials. If Princess Consort makes a big deal out of this, and someone with ulterior motives gets a hold of it, wouldn't Wang Ye's illustrious reputation be completely ruined? Su Weiji saw that Xie Yu was really anxious, and her words had become sharp. Worried that she would hurt the relationship between master and servant, he coughed lightly to remind her. "Wang Yi, Wang Fei is wholeheartedly devoted to you. It is truly rare. But this old man is worried that Wang Fei will act rashly and lose her head. It is a small matter if she gives your majesty some information, but if she really encounters any danger, it is not a joke. A place like the Imperial Mausoleum would definitely be heavily guarded. Your majesty has already promoted Lu Weigui to be the county magistrate of Huichuan. This person has always been known for being cautious, and I'm sure that after all the trouble that has happened in Huichuan, he will be more cautious. After Lu Weigui takes over, he will definitely keep a close eye on them." Xie Yu nodded. "That's right. If Princess Consort is not careful, the army guarding the Imperial Mausoleum may come into conflict with the local government. If something really happens, the consequences will be unimaginable." At this time, Pang Xiao had already recovered from his deep shock. The analysis of the two wise men was so insightful that he had to pay attention to it. Since things have come to this, it is important to immediately order people to catch up with Sister Yi. Tang Xiu, take some people and secretly go out of the city to Huichuan. Try your best to catch up with Princess Consort and persuade her to come back. Tang Xiu nodded and was about to leave immediately. However, Su Weiji said, Wang Yi, in this old man's opinion, I'm afraid that this will not be enough to persuade Princess Consort. The two of us have already tried our best to persuade Princess Consort, but Princess Consort is still unmoved. She will definitely avenge you. Even if Imperial Bodyguard Tang goes, I'm afraid it will be of no help. Pang Xiao said. Actually, this king also knows that Sister Yi has a stubborn personality. Since she has made a decision, I'm afraid it will be difficult for her to turn back. If we can't persuade her, we can only strengthen the protection. She took her own people and went alone because she didn't want to tire me out before the incident happened. I also understand her painstaking efforts. However, with more people, the probability of an incident happening will be lower. At this time, Xiaoyu and Su Weiji finally understood that Wang Yi couldn't be tough with Princess Consort at all. The scene of Wang Yi sending troops to catch her that they were thinking of would probably not happen. The two of them couldn't help but sigh at the same time. Pang Xiao could see what the two of them were thinking, but he couldn't give Qin Yining a stable life like an ordinary woman. He had to give her enough space. If something happened, they would face it together. It would be better if he didn't use forceful means to hurt her. Pang Xiao also knew that his way of thinking wasn't rational enough. However, when he encountered Qin Yining, this was how he would be. He enjoyed it and enjoyed it. Just as Tang Xiu was about to go out, a guard quickly came in and reported, Wang Yi, young Master Mu, and his people are back. When Pang Xiao heard this, he was immediately overjoyed. Quickly invite them in. Qin Yining's journey was quite smooth. On the way to Huichuan County, they encountered fewer refugees than near the capital. When the carriages and horses moved, they didn't have to worry about avoiding people, so their speed was a bit faster. Huichuan County was not far from the capital, so they dared to enter the city before the end of the month. Because Qin Yining was a familiar face here, everyone disguised themselves before entering the city. Qin Yining wore a dark green half-fold cotton gown. Her hair was tied up with a dark blue headscarf. Her face, neck, and hand were smeared with the special cream that Xiaoyu gave her. Her skin was dark yellow. Even if an acquaintance stood in front of her, they might not be able to recognize her. The people around her also dressed up like this, making them look like a family of brothers and sisters who had moved. The group of people went to the inn to stay for the night. They didn't book a side courtyard like before. Instead, they chose 3 rooms nearby. Qin Yining and Ji Yun shared one room, while the other 8 people shared a room with 4 people. There wasn't much business in the inn. Natural and man-made disasters kept happening. Huichuan County was a sensitive area, so refugees didn't want to come here. Outsiders rarely came here. When the innkeeper saw that Qin Yining's group generously booked 3 rooms and served them hot water and dry food, he was very meticulous. Everyone rested for a while. Jingzhe and Liao Zhibing went to the city to inquire about the news. When they came back in the afternoon, they whispered about the current situation in Huichuan County. County Magistrate Liu is a cautious person. Because of that incident, the Imperial Mausoleum and the Stone Factory have become the focus of protection. The surrounding area is heavily guarded, and ordinary people can't get close. If you want to take action, I'm afraid you have to think about it carefully. Liao Zhibing sighed. The reality was different from what he had imagined. Qin Yining nodded and said, "This is also expected. Your Majesty values the Imperial Mausoleum so much." County Magistrate Liu has learned from the previous county magistrates and can't not do his best. She rubbed her eyebrows. Just as she was thinking of a countermeasure, the sound of a gong suddenly came from the street. Jian pushed open the window and looked down. She saw many people curiously rushing forward. The person who rang the gong was followed by more than 10 men. Everyone stretched their necks and shouted, "Everyone, go to the Imperial Mausoleum. Everyone, go to the big square in the east of the county immediately. The Imperial Court has something important to announce." When the people heard that the Imperial Court was going to announce something, many of them retreated. They resisted in their hearts and didn't want to show their faces. As long as the Imperial Court was involved, they would avoid it. Chapter 1086. Qin Yining narrowed his eyes and suddenly said, "Look at those men who are playing gongs and singing. They don't seem to be people from the Yamen. Ji Yin was stunned and quickly leaned out to take a look. It's as you said, they don't look familiar. Ji Yin was suspicious and inexplicably nervous. They had lived in Huichuan County for a few months, and Pang Zhao's identity was special, so they naturally had a lot of contact with the Yamen. Even if they didn't recognize all the bailiffs in the Yamen, they were still very familiar with them. However, these people in front of them were very unfamiliar. They weren't wearing official uniforms, but they kept saying that they were here to deliver a message from the imperial court. Qin Yining said, "Since that's the case, let's not move for the time being and quietly listen to the news. Don't act rashly." "Yes, don't worry." Liao Zhibing and the others nodded, and their hearts were also in their mouths. This time, when they came to Huichuan County, the entire county was filled with an indescribable strangeness. The few of them were prepared to move at any time, so they quietly stayed in Qin Yining and Ji Yun's room and waited for the news. At this time, it was naturally safer to gather together. Not long after, someone on the street knocked on the gong and shouted, "Everyone, gather at the big square in the east. The imperial court has something important to announce, so all the villagers must go. No one is allowed to delay." Qin Yining and the others looked at each other. If the imperial court has any news, they won't make such a big fuss. Naturally, there will be people who will look at the announcement, and there will also be literate people who will read out loud. This time, it seems like they want everyone in the county to go to the East Square. You're right. I feel the same way too. Why don't we wait a little longer? I'm afraid that if we don't go, someone will come and check. If they find out that we don't want to go, it will attract attention. Everyone couldn't make a decision for a moment. Qin Yining didn't say anything, so no one moved. When someone on the street knocked on the gong and shouted again and began to force some women and children who were unwilling to show their faces to go to the square, Qin Yining stood up and said, "I'm afraid we can't avoid it. Let's take this opportunity to go and take a look." Everyone knew that they couldn't avoid it, so they followed Qin Yining downstairs. As soon as they reached the street, the group blended perfectly into the crowd of commoners heading east. Fortunately, they had made sufficient preparations before they came. When they disguised themselves as ordinary citizens, none of them were eye-catching. They were able to blend in perfectly with the crowd. Not long after, a group of people followed the crowd to the square. As far as the eye could see, at least half of the county's citizens had come. Behind them, there seemed to be many women and children being urged to walk over. Qin Yining said doubtfully, "I really didn't see any bailiffs." "Yes," Jingzhe said in a low voice. "Master, something doesn't seem right." Liao Zhibing also said, "It seems like someone has taken control of the Yamen and called all the people here to do something." After all, Huichuan County was where the Imperial Mausoleum was located. Its location was too sensitive. Anyone who wanted to target Li Qitian couldn't touch Li Qitian himself. Seeing how Li Qitian treasured the Imperial Mausoleum, who wouldn't have thoughts about the Imperial Mausoleum? Qin Yining said in a low voice, "Don't be anxious. Let's not act rashly. Let's just hide in the crowd for now." The commoners who came on their own accord had already crowded the square to the point that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Many of the people who came later were unwilling. Some of them were cursing the imperial court in a low voice for causing trouble again. If they had the time, why didn't they think about how to feed the commoners? There were also people who scolded the people who went to pass the message for being too vicious. Qin Yining felt like she had fallen into a hive of bees. She was surrounded by buzzing sounds. But soon, she didn't have time to care about these things. This was because she saw a familiar figure in the distance climb onto a temporary high platform in front of the square. The people around her naturally saw it as well. Ji Yin lowered her voice and said, "It's Lu Heng." Qin Yining's expression immediately became serious. Lu Heng was no longer the local county magistrate. What was he trying to do in the name of the imperial court? Lu Heng had been the county magistrate of Huichuan County before. Many of the commoners recognized him. Not only were the people around Qin Yining surprised, but the commoners were also confused. Didn't Lord Lu quit being the county magistrate? Why didn't Lord Lu come to announce the imperial court's matters? Once the first person had doubts, there was a second and a third. These kinds of discussions were like ripples. Many of the commoners whispered to each other, guessing what the imperial court was going to do. Those who didn't know would only think that Lu Heng had been arranged by Your Majesty to do some work elsewhere. However, Qin Yining and the others had heavy hearts. This time, Lu Heng was clearly going to fight with Li Qitian. In recent days, the Lu family had been weakened. Although Lu Heng had taken the main backbone of the Lu family with him when he escaped, how could Lu Heng be willing to let such a huge family be trampled under someone's feet at such a time? Qin Yining thought about Lu Heng's temperament, his recent actions, and the situation of the disaster victims. His heart trembled as he muttered, "I'm afraid he's going to rebel." Ji Yun and Jing Zhe, who were next to him, heard it clearly. The two of them felt their hands and feet turn cold, and they didn't know how to react. Back in Dian, they had witnessed the fall of a dynasty with their own eyes. They also knew that when the emperor was in power, there were a few commoners who rose up in rebellion, but it ended in failure. Ordinary commoners didn't act in a systematic manner, but Lu Heng was a scheming and astute person who was familiar with military books. What he wanted to do in Huichuan County was as clear as day. Fellow villagers and elders. At this time, Lu Heng, who was standing on the stage, mustered up all his strength and said loudly, "It was this Lu's idea to gather all of you here today. This Lu is truly apologetic for wasting everyone's time. However, this Lu family has suffered unjust injustice and abuse, and we want to take this opportunity to redress our grievances. Fellow villagers, please listen to me." Although there were many commoners in the square, everyone's attention was focused on Lu Heng. Lu Heng's words of unjust injustice of the Lu family successfully piqued their curiosity. Everyone quieted down and listened to Lu Heng's speech. As everyone knows, our Lu family has been a prominent family for hundreds of years. Dating back to before Beiji was established, our Lu family was already a prominent local family. In recent years, the world has been in chaos, and the commoners have had no way to make a living. The reason why the Lu family is loyal to Your Majesty is to end the chaos and give the commoners a stable life. However, everyone, take a look. What did Your Majesty do with the money that our Lu family gave him? Even though he had the money, he wasn't willing to think of ways to sell food to the commoners. Instead, he wholeheartedly wanted to build the imperial mausoleum. In Your Majesty's heart, the glory of his death is even more important than the lives of the commoners. Chapter 1087. Lu Heng's words made the hearts of everyone present heavy. No one wanted to live in a chaotic world, and no one wanted to face destruction and death. The Lu family had such a deep foundation, but there would be a day when it would be destroyed. Lu Heng had such a high status, was a marquis, and was also the head of a large aristocratic family. Now, he had to live such a precarious life, let alone ordinary people like them. The people's faces were solemn. Qin Yining couldn't help but admire Lu Heng's ability to stir people's emotions and make them sympathize with him. His words captured the hearts of the ordinary people and placed his actions on the side of justice. It also made people sympathize with his experience. In this way, no matter what he did next, it would be more justifiable. Lu Heng looked around at the people present and opened his arms. He said loudly, "Is this kind of emperor really the son of heaven's mandate?" When the incapable emperor was in power in Beiji, everyone didn't have enough to eat or wear, and their lives were precarious. At that time, everyone had one or two people who died of hunger or illness. I thought that everything would improve in Dezhou, but now Your Majesty is actually the same as the incapable emperor in Beiji. He doesn't care about the lives of the people and used all his money to build the imperial mausoleum. Lu Heng angrily pointed in the direction of the imperial mausoleum. Every word seemed to contain tears of blood. He said sadly, "How much of our people's blood and sweat is mixed in there? How many people have sacrificed their lives in order to build the imperial mausoleum? Your Majesty ordered us around like mules and horses. Not only did they use us, but they also wanted to eat our flesh and drink our blood. Everyone in Huichuan is better, but you don't know how many people have starved to death in Dezhou. Not to mention those far away. Just the starving people in Shangjing who sought your majesty's protection were all blocked outside the city gates by your majesty's troops. You would rather let them starve to death outside the city gates than enter the capital. In the capital, there are still songs and dances, and your majesty is still leading those corrupt officials to enjoy themselves. This is our Dezhou, and this is the emperor we have high hopes for. Tell me, is such an incapable emperor worthy of our trust? Is he worthy of this position? Lu Heng's roar shook the heavens. The emotions of the common people were stirred up, but very few people dared to respond to his words. However, there were always some simple-minded and hot-blooded young people in the crowd. As long as someone took the lead, their emotions would be stirred up, and they would not care much for a moment. Perhaps it was Lu Heng's arrangement, but someone in the crowd was the first to shout, "Unworthy! A fatuous ruler doesn't deserve it." Soon after, there were scattered voices of agreement. In the end, it turned into a mass of excitement. As early as when Qin Yining and Pang Xiao were still here, there were already signs of food shortage. For this reason, Qin Yining even ordered Master Zhong to think of a way to distribute food and also to guide some people to cultivate terrace fields. Now that the resentment that had been suppressed for so long had finally erupted under Lu Heng's intentional guidance, it was very difficult to suppress the people's resentment once it boiled over. Everyone in the open space was cursing angrily. Their roars were so loud that it made people's hearts tremble. Lu Heng stood on a high platform and also waved his fists and cursed. Then, he pointed in the direction of the imperial mausoleum and shouted, "The fatuous ruler doesn't care about our lives because of the imperial mausoleum. Since I dare to stand out today, I dare to stand out. I will go and destroy the imperial mausoleum for him. This matter has nothing to do with anyone here. Even if the fatuous ruler really blames me one day, I will bear the responsibility alone. Today, everyone will be my witnesses." Lu Heng climbed down the high platform as he spoke. Immediately, there were men protecting Lu Heng on both sides. Like Moses parting the sea, they passed through the crowd and headed in the direction of the imperial mausoleum. The common people automatically opened up a path for them, and then curiously followed behind. Qin Yining and his group were also pulled along and followed. Liao Zhibing lowered his voice and whispered in Qin Yining's ear, "We haven't even finished what we wanted to do, and we've already been snatched away." Qin Yining pursed his lips and said, "There are no other ways at this time." Since he stood out like this, he must have made complete preparations. "I'm afraid there's no chance for my plan to be carried out." Jingzhi said in a low voice, "That's good too. It saves us some trouble." Qin Yining smiled, but his eyes were full of worry. Although it saves us some trouble, he incited the common people's emotions and destroyed the imperial mausoleum, which is equivalent to starting a rebellion. Huichuan is also close to the capital, and it also involves the imperial mausoleum. I'm afraid that it will cause the imperial court to go crazy and suppress it. When the people around him heard this, they all fell silent for a moment. When the emperor rises, the common people suffer. When the emperor dies, the common people suffer. Lu Heng could retreat at any time, but the unlucky ones were the common people who stayed behind. The reason why Qin Yining wanted to destroy the imperial mausoleum quietly was because he was afraid that if he did it with great fanfare, it would implicate everyone. But now, she was powerless to change the current situation. The mighty crowd surged towards the imperial mausoleum. Lu Heng seemed to have been prepared. When they were a certain distance away, a group of men blocked the common people's path and shouted, "Fellow villagers, it's dangerous to get any closer. We need to use kerosene. Everyone back off. Back off." Once they heard that they needed kerosene, the common people knew how dangerous it was and didn't dare to move forward. However, the imperial mausoleum was right in front of them. Everyone's attention was focused on the front of the group. Some people climbed up trees, some climbed up large rocks, and some found a high ground. They were all waiting for the imperial mausoleum to be destroyed. Among all the common people, Only a portion of them had worried expressions. Destroying the imperial mausoleum was considered a rebellion. Even if Lu Heng said that he would take responsibility for everything, who knew if the higher-ups wouldn't blame the entire county's common people? Previously, some of the relatives in Danfu County said that when the common people of Danfu County gathered in front of the mausoleum to cause trouble, Your Majesty almost killed all the common people in the county. Your Majesty even sent troops and horses. It was only because Prince Zhongshuan interceded that they were spared from suffering. Now that Prince Zhongshuan wasn't around, if Liu Boi destroyed the imperial mausoleum and ran away, who would be the scapegoat? When some people thought of this, they didn't even want to watch the show anymore. They pulled their relatives and friends back. However, they didn't succeed in leaving this place, because at some point, a large number of men with weapons had surrounded this area. The way back had been blocked. They wanted to speak out, but the other party's knives were on their necks. They didn't dare to make a sound. Therefore, the people who were surrounded in the middle couldn't notice the situation at the edge. They were all still discussing and craning their necks to look forward. They saw Lu Heng step forward, holding a torch high. He bent down and lit a long fuse on the ground. Then, he immediately retreated. The common people saw that the spark was like a snake, spitting out its scarlet tongue as it moved toward the square hole made of wood. Everyone waited. Time seemed to drag on indefinitely. No one knew when the kerosene would be lit, and no one thought about where the troops that were originally guarding the imperial mausoleum had gone. After waiting for a long time, the scene they wanted didn't happen. Someone muttered in a low voice, "Did they fail?" Chapter 1088. The ground is shaking. The earth is turning over. Don't panic. It's the Imperial Mausoleum. The Imperial Mausoleum is going to collapse. In the face of a true disaster, the commoners who were craning their necks to watch the commotion earlier were now panicking and retreating in a panic. Qin Yining was pushed back by the crowd. She staggered and almost fell. Ji Yun supported her arm and steadied the two of them with great difficulty. The ground was still shaking, and then the sound of a collapse came from the entrance of the Imperial Mausoleum. All these years, Li Qiqian had treated the Imperial Mausoleum as a career and invested a large amount of manpower and resources to build it. However, it gradually collapsed in a short period of time. Even the originally flat ground nearby showed signs of cracking and sinking. The commoners were finally frightened. Everyone fled in panic, afraid that they would fall into the ruins of the Imperial Mausoleum and not even their bones would be left. Qin Yining was pushed by the chaotic crowd. If it weren't for the people beside her protecting her, she might have fallen and been trampled by others. While she was fleeing in panic, Qin Yining saw Lu Heng, who was surrounded by guards, through the gaps in the crowd. Lu Heng's expression was calm, as if the chaos in front of him wasn't caused by him. It was also as if the collapse of the ground had nothing to do with him. The coldness in his eyes was something that Qin Yining had never seen in him before. It was as if he was already outside of the mortal world, using a cold gaze to watch this farce of life and death. Nothing could affect his emotions. Qin Yining pursed her lips. Taking advantage of the fact that Lu Heng hadn't noticed her, she looked away and pulled Ji Yun's hand to quickly escape. The moment she turned around, Lu Heng seemed to sense something and looked in her direction. That figure was tall and slender. Under the coarse clothes was an exquisite figure. Beauty was in the bones. Qin Yining had this kind of characteristic. Lu Heng's heart thumped. He didn't move at all when he saw so many commoners fall into the deep pit, but at this moment his heart was beating faster. He couldn't help but chase after her. Master? Just as the imperial bodyguard beside him was about to take him away from this place, Lu Heng suddenly led him astray and hurriedly pulled him back. Lu Heng stared in one direction, but he still lost track of that person in the surging crowd. Was it her? There was no way he was mistaken. Although he was surprised that someone who had been in the capital a while ago would come to the Imperial Mausoleum at this time, Lu Heng did not doubt it at all. Perhaps this was the best chance for him to have her forever and keep her by his side. Order our men to surround this place quickly. Don't let anyone escape. Lu Heng quickened his pace as he instructed in a deep voice. This is a special situation. We don't know how many forces are in the crowd. If news of this gets out, I'm afraid we won't be able to survive." Upon hearing this, the subordinate understood the seriousness of the matter and immediately passed down Lu Heng's instructions. Qin Yining and his men approached the edge of the square. Jingzhi immediately saw the armed men surrounding them. "Master, what should we do?" Jingzhi did not dare to act blindly without thinking. Taking advantage of the fact that many commoners were coming forward to question and push him, Jingzhi retreated to Qin Yining's side. Qin Yining pursed his lips and said, "It seems that luring everyone here to see the imperial mausoleum being destroyed was just a bait. What he really wants to do is to gather the entire county's commoners here." "Why would he gather so many people?" Ji Yun asked anxiously. Qin Yining smiled, but his smile did not reach his eyes. "Since he's plotting a rebellion, he naturally wants to occupy this place. He'll gather everyone here to screen them and silence any suspicious people. Only then can he ensure his own safety." Liao Zhibing's expression was serious as he pursed his lips. His drooping lips deepened the wrinkles on his face. "A lion's head, if that's the case, I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to escape." Naturally, it would not be easy for them to escape because they were suspicious people to Lu Heng. Qin Yining bit her lower lip with her pearly white teeth, and her pale lips regained some color. "We can only act according to the circumstances. If necessary, we'll kill our way out." Before she could do what she came here to do, Lu Heng had already taken the initiative. If she was captured by him and used as a bargaining chip to threaten Pang Xiao, then this trip would be a complete failure. At this moment, Xiao Shui turned her head in confusion and said, "I think I heard the sound of horse hooves." "I heard it too," Jingzhi also said. It was noisy all around, and the commoners were shouting nonstop. Qin Yining could not hear the voices outside, but she naturally believed what Xiao Shui and Jingzhi said. "Let's wait here for an opportunity. I think Lu Heng's troops have come to reinforce us. There are so many commoners in Huichuan County. If he wants to screen them, it won't be easy. Let's take this opportunity to escape." "Yes." The few of them nodded in agreement. While they were talking, the troops had already rushed over like a rising tide, blocking all the roads back to the city. The commoners were already panicking. Many of their relatives and friends had already died when the imperial mausoleum collapsed. Now that they saw the sudden arrival of the troops, everyone was scared out of their wits. At this moment, Lu Heng had already reached the periphery. He still stood on a high ground and said loudly, "Everyone, don't panic. What happened was just an accident. No one could have predicted it. I destroyed the imperial mausoleum and must have angered the incapable ruler. I know that all of you are righteous and chivalrous, but it's hard to guarantee that there won't be any lackeys of the incapable ruler among you. Therefore, everyone should line up quietly and go through the inspection one by one. As long as you can prove your identity, you can go home. From now on, I won't let anyone disturb your lives. Everyone can still live as usual." After Lu Heng finished speaking, someone immediately blended into the crowd and loudly repeated his words. The situation was stronger than the person. The commoners were scared out of their wits. At this moment, the knife was in someone else's hand. What else could they do other than obey? On the way back, there were already checkpoints set up. Everyone swarmed forward to prove their identity. Lu Heng's subordinates began to record it. Those who didn't have relatives or friends were not allowed to pass. They all stood together. Some people were filled with worry, while others were filled with anger and refused to submit. When they were interrogated, they stubbornly asked, "Who do you think you are?" "You're rebelling. I'm a citizen of Dezhou. I won't listen to the orders of a rebel." When these words came out, whether it was Lu Heng's subordinates or the surrounding commoners, they all turned pale with fright. Lu Heng also heard this person's question. He said in a low voice, "This person must be the incapable ruler's lackey. He's an accomplice of the incapable ruler who oppresses the commoners. Kill him." With this order, the rebellious person didn't even have time to defend himself before a blade was placed on his neck. Fresh blood spurted into the sky. The commoners were so scared that they couldn't even make sound. All of them only knew how to retreat. Lu Heng was very satisfied with this silent scene. He said in a gentle voice, "Don't worry. The people I killed were all the incapable ruler's lackeys. As long as you can prove your innocence to each other, I won't do anything to anyone. Therefore, I ask all of you to cooperate for your own sake. Don't follow the wrong path." As he spoke, he waved his hand, indicating for the inspection to continue. Chapter 1089. Faced with such a situation, Qin Yining's expression could not help but turn serious. Lu Heng was not an ordinary person, and he had other thoughts about her. Naturally, he would pay more attention to her. Qin Yining did not know about others. Anyway, if she was facing someone she cared about, no matter how the other party disguised themselves, she would be able to recognize them immediately, even if she could only see their back view. She clenched her fingers nervously. This time, she only rubbed her skin until it darkened a little. It was not as unrecognizable as when Xie Yu disguised her. She did not dare to take the risk in front of Lu Heng. If Lu Heng had the chance, he would definitely kidnap her again. At that time, wouldn't it be difficult to deal with Pang Xiao? "Master, what should we do?" Ji Yun's lowered voice was very tense. Qin Yining pursed her lips and said softly, "Find a chance to escape." The citizens gradually approached the place where they were being interrogated. The neighbors and relatives were anxiously testifying for each other. Even the citizens who had passed the interrogation and could prove themselves did not leave immediately. Instead, they stood not far away to watch in case anyone was left behind. Most of the citizens were obedient, but a small number of people were still unconvinced. Even after the other party killed one to warn the others, there were still some knowledgeable and courageous citizens who questioned, "What are you doing? How much better are you than the incapable ruler of Beiji? Are you disregarding the safety of the citizens and trying to usurp the throne?" There were even those who were loyal to the Zhou who refused to submit. They straightened their necks and shouted, "Surnamed Liu, aren't you afraid that your future generations will be mocked by your actions?" Lu Heng stood at a high place and could not help but laugh when he heard these words. Future generations? The Liu family has already been harmed to this extent by the incapable ruler. How can we have future generations? I think you are a spy by the incapable ruler's side. Arrest him. Yes. Lu Heng's soldiers were well trained. They immediately shouted in unison. They directly tied up the person who spoke and brought him to the side. Seeing that Lu Heng did not continue to kill, many citizens quietly heaved a sigh of relief. Qin Yining's expression became even more solemn. If Lu Heng went on a killing spree as soon as he arrived, it meant that he only wanted to avenge the Lu clan and did not necessarily have the intention to rebel. But now, Qin Yining was even more certain that he was after more than that. Otherwise, he wouldn't have immediately changed his image among the common people after establishing his power. From the looks of it, there was no point in waiting any longer. Qin Yining ordered the people around him to rush out as soon as there was a chance. Just as Liao Zhibing and Jing Zhe were carefully observing and looking for an opportunity, there was a commotion from the direction of the city. Qin Yining clearly saw that Lu Heng's face stiffened for a moment after hearing the report from the people standing at a high place. Soon after, Jing Zhe and the others noticed that the soldiers guarding the outer perimeter, which were not very important, were quietly retreating. They seemed to be heading towards the city. Qin Yining's heart skipped a beat. He immediately said, "Now?" Liao Zhibing and the other brothers from the Qin-Tian alliance reacted quickly. They immediately shouted, "We can't just let this go. Lu Heng clearly wants to kill us. Folks, run." The citizens were already worried. Regardless of whether or not they could completely understand Lu Heng's actions and their situation, one thing was clear. Lu Heng was not someone who wouldn't kill civilians. If he killed people, he could just pin a more convincing crime on them. Who could guarantee that they wouldn't be punished? With someone taking the lead, there would be others who would follow. The citizens who were originally obediently waiting to be interrogated began to make a ruckus again. The crowd pushed and shoved as they rushed out. Qin Yining and the others took the opportunity to mix in with the crowd and also rushed out in a panic. A portion of Lu Heng's men had been sent away, so the encirclement was not as tight as it was at the beginning. Qin Yining and the others chose the weakest point to attack and quickly rushed out of the encirclement with the other citizens. The citizens were in such a mess that Lu Heng felt like his head was in a mess. He hurriedly ordered people to stop them. However, he couldn't order people to kill them. Killing a few people could be used as a deterrent, but if he started a massacre, wouldn't the citizens of Huichuan County become his enemies in the future? That would make it difficult to control them. Therefore, Lu Heng could only order people, try your best to capture them. Don't kill them. With this sentence, Qin Yining and the others couldn't kill the other party soldiers. In addition, Qin Yining's men were all elites, and the other party's abilities were mixed. They quickly found an opening to escape. Lu Heng turned around and looked at the chaotic crowd. He saw the familiar figure wrapped in a group of people and running out. His heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly ordered the people around him, "Chase after them. Bring that woman back to me." His subordinates immediately responded and rushed in the direction Lu Heng pointed. Only a small number of people were left to continue the interrogation. Although the citizens had the advantage in numbers, after Lu Heng ordered people to kill 2 people to intimidate the crowd, the citizens who were afraid of death didn't dare to take the lead. They weren't suspicious people. They were just proving each other's identities. If they wanted to interrogate them, then so be it. Everyone swallowed their anger and cooperated. The commotion quickly subsided. The scene was still a scene that Lu Heng was satisfied with. However, his mind kept replaying the figure he caught a glimpse of just now. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that it was Qin Yining. Just as Lu Heng was frowning and thinking about how to send more people to capture Qin Yining, Qin Yining's group had already encountered the pursuers sent by Lu Heng. Lu Heng's subordinates weren't mediocre people. Jing Zhe, Liao Zhibing, and the others protected Qin Yining as they escaped. They didn't want Qin Yining to be injured at all. Therefore, the journey was very difficult. They ran in all directions in the remote alleys of the county town. They almost couldn't tell the direction they came from. Qin Yining was exhausted and panting heavily. Jing Zhe and the others were worried. They said in a low voice, "Master, I'm afraid we'll be caught soon if we continue like headless flies. We have to think of a way out. If we're caught, I'm afraid it'll be difficult for us to protect you. Try to find horses. Once we have horses, we can leave this place. We won't be able to defeat the pursuers by relying on our legs." Everyone agreed and ran even harder in the direction of the inn. Firstly, it was because the distance was closer. Secondly, the horses they brought were still in the straw shed in the backyard of the inn. When the pursuers sent by Lu Heng saw that such a small group of people had such exquisite martial arts and incredible escape skills, they became even more suspicious and tried even harder to capture them. The other party had so many people. Even if Qin Yining had brought elites, how many nails could a piece of good iron crush? Everyone quickly realized that they had no way of escaping successfully under the pressure of the other party's numbers. It was even more difficult to go to the inn and steal the horses. Jing Zhe, Liao Zhibing, and the others had to protect Qin Yining and find a way out. They were already badly battered. Qin Yining naturally thought of the day when Sakurai had stood in front of her and died for her. His heart suddenly quivered. Chapter 1090. Qin Yining was protected in the middle, and the sound of weapons clashing could be heard constantly. She was tightly protected, but if this went on and Lu Heng sent more people, they would not be able to escape. They were gradually outnumbered, and in order to protect Qin Yining, they could only retreat as they fought. However, just as Qin Yining expected, the number of people on the other side gradually increased, and Jing Zhe and the others found it increasingly difficult to move. "We can't go on like this. I'm afraid we won't be able to last until we reach the inn," Jing Zhe said softly. Before Qin Yining could reply, another series of footsteps approached. "Master, we can't go on like this." Ji Yun pulled Qin Yining's hand with a serious expression and ran into a nearby alley. The rest of the people formed a semicircle to fend off the pursuers as they retreated. "We have to find a place to hide." Qin Yining ran until he was out of breath. "But where can we hide now?" Looking around, the streets were completely silent. Other than the sounds of fighting between the pursuers and Jing Zhe and the others, the streets were completely silent. The citizens who were gradually released did not dare to stay on the streets and locked their doors after they returned home. Where could they hide? At this moment, everyone turned the corner and arrived in front of Huichuan County's Yamen. At this moment, the Yamen's doors were tightly shut, and there were even more soldiers gathering outside. It was obvious that they were going to attack the Yamen. Qin Yining turned pale with fright. More and more enemies were coming. What should they do? Qin Yining immediately took out the seal on his waist that proved his identity as Prince Zhongshuan's consort and stuffed it into Ji Yun's hands. Quickly go to the side door and tell them that I'm here. Yes. Everyone hurriedly retreated to the alley where the side door was. Because the alley was narrow, the pursuers could not swarm in, which greatly reduced the impact. In addition, they came at the right time. Lu Heng's men had just arrived at the main entrance and did not have time to arrange their men at the side door, so everyone quickly arrived in front of the side door. While Jing Zhe and the rest were defending themselves, Ji Yun pulled Qin Yining and pounded on the door. Open the door. The princess consort was here. It's Prince Zhongshuan's wife. Open the door. Someone was moving around inside, but the door was not opened immediately. The pursuers had obviously heard Ji Yun's voice as well. They were extremely surprised and attacked even more ferociously. Jing Zhe and the others were already covered in blood. Some of it was their wounds, but most of it was from the pursuers. Qin Yining pursed his lips and said loudly, "If you take me in, Wang Yi will definitely send people to rescue you. At that time, you will also be able to escape danger." Perhaps it was because Prince Zhongshuan's reputation was too resounding, or perhaps they also wanted to borrow Wang Ye's troops to quell the rebellion in Malaysia, but the side door was finally open a crack. Two bailiffs waved their hands. Quick, quick, come in quickly." Ji Yun hurriedly pulled Qin Yining into the house. Jing Zhe and the rest heaved a sigh of relief and retreated into the Yamen's side, door one after another. The bailiffs quickly closed the side door and locked it with a bolt. They even found a heavy object to block the door. Qin Yining looked around and saw that there were many bailiffs standing in the courtyard. Everyone's body was tense as they guarded the surroundings, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. He could not help but sigh. If the enemy attacks, do we have a chance of winning? The leader of the bailiffs shook his head. If the enemy attacks with fire, we have no chance of winning. Qin Yining nodded solemnly. Where's your county magistrate? As soon as he finished speaking, a middle-aged man walked over quickly with several attendants. When he saw Qin Yining, the man paused and immediately bowed. Huichuan County Magistrate Lu Weigui greets the princess consort. Lord Lu, you may dispense with the formalities, Qin Yining asked worriedly. I think Lu Hong has completely rebelled. Does Lord Lu have a plan? Lu Weigui's brows were furrowed so tightly that they could squash a fly. He shook his head with a distressed expression. In reply to the princess consort, this lowly official really has no other choice. Lu Hong has a large number of troops and horses. If they really swarm him, the people here are no match for him. This lowly official has long been prepared to die for the country. With your majesty's temper, if Lu Weigui does not atone for his crimes with his death, his entire family and 9 generations of his family will be implicated. Qin Yining nodded helplessly. The bailiffs who were on standby around him comforted them. Everyone, don't worry. Lu Hong will not attack the Yamen with fire for the time being. Everyone looked over in confusion. As Qin Yining had lived in Huichuan County for a long time, everyone found her familiar. They also knew of Pang Zhao's reputation, so they respected Qin Yining even more. Therefore, even though she was a woman, everyone did not have the slightest intention of belittling her. Qin Yining said, just now in the square, although Lu Heng's actions showed that he did not care about the lives of the people, his mouth seemed to be smeared with honey. He was playing the emotional card. Moreover, if he really did not want to leave behind any good memories, he would not have spent the effort to gather people. He would have directly ordered people to massacre the entire city. Therefore, Lu Heng obviously has a plan. He still hopes that Huichuan County can be safely preserved for future use. If he really attacks the Yamen with fire, the people will definitely panic. At that time, it will be a big problem to appease the people. Lu Heng is a smart person. He will not kill us before he completes his plan. That will bring him extremely bad consequences. Qin Yining's voice was neither fast nor slow. The bailiffs who heard it all nodded. Lu Weigui also understood and said with admiration, "The princess consort is right." This lowly official lost his sense of propriety in a moment of desperation. It really happened so suddenly that this lowly official only had time to close the door. Fortunately, the walls of the yamen were different from those of ordinary people. Otherwise, they might not have been able to defend until now. Just as everyone was talking, the commotion outside the door had stopped. An elder's voice could be heard over the wall. An incapable ruler is tyrannical and does not care about the lives of the people. Are you bailiffs at the yamen door willing to be the dogs of an incapable ruler? Quickly open the door. We will definitely not harm the lives of innocent people like you. If you stubbornly resist, I'm afraid the gains will not make up for the losses. As soon as the elder finished speaking, a younger voice said, "Call the Prince Zhongshuan's consort out. We will definitely not kill anyone in the yamen." "That's right. Hand over the princess consort," the man outside roared. Lu Weigui's face turned pale when he heard this. His hands were trembling as he looked at Qin Yining with hesitation and worry. Qin Yining was not afraid at all. He sneered and said, "You have all seen it. The other party is determined to occupy this place. At this time, the most important thing is to defend them to the death while the matter in the city is not over. We will stall for time and wait for the imperial court's rescue." Huichuan County was too close to the capital. There was also the imperial mausoleum here, which had been maliciously destroyed by fire oil. How could someone with Li Qitian's temperament tolerate this? If the rebels wanted to occupy Huichuan County, how could they just let them occupy it? Where was Li Qitian's prestige? Therefore, Qin Yining was certain that the reinforcements would arrive soon. Lu Weigui also nodded. "Don't worry, princess consort. We are loyal to the emperor and love our country. We will definitely not allow the rebels to stir up trouble." His words strengthened everyone's belief. Everyone in the yamen door wanted to defend the place and wait for the reinforcements to arrive. Therefore, they were indifferent to the clamor of Lu Heng's men outside the door. They only arranged their surroundings more closely. When Qin Yining saw this, he knew that nothing would happen for the time being. He turned around and told Jing Zhe and the other 8 people, "Your injuries are not light. Quickly go and treat them. Everything will be fine for now." Chapter 1091. Liao Zhibing, Jing Zhe, and the others had seen the destruction of mountains and rivers in the Dian dynasty and knew the danger at this time. Although the princess consort appeared calm, they were still trapped in the yamen. Fortunately, the walls of the yamen were tall and sturdy. If it was an ordinary residence, the enemy would have already broken in. But even so, with the few people in the yamen, it was harder than ascending to heaven to fight against Lu Heng's people. They still wanted to capture Qin Yining alive, so they didn't attack. If they didn't care about Qin Yining's life and death, they were afraid that once the kerosene was used, none of them would survive. "Wang Fei, you don't need to persuade us. We won't leave your side." Ji Yin used a handkerchief to wipe the blood on her cheeks and said with a naughty smile, "If Wang Fei can't bear it, you can reward us with a good meal later." "That's right." Liao Zhibing and the 4 people from the Qingtian alliance nodded in agreement. With thousands of soldiers and horses outside, Lu Heng would soon know that she was here and would definitely order people to surround this place. He might even use any means to force them to hand her over. But in such a dangerous situation, the people around her didn't give up on her. Qin Yining's heart felt warm, and her gaze became more serious. She had to think of a way out for the people around her. She couldn't let them lose their lives here. She didn't want to see Sakurai's tragedy ever again. Lu Weigui took his attendants and private advisor to patrol the yamen. He ordered his subordinates to be on high alert and patiently repeated Qin Yining's analysis to those who weren't present. "Huichuan is very close to the capital. Your Majesty will definitely act quickly and won't let the traitors off lightly. Reinforcements will arrive soon." With this thought, Even if the danger was right in front of them, everyone braced themselves. At least they didn't have to fight endlessly. They could defend with all their strength until reinforcements arrived. Lu Weigui respectfully bowed and said, "Wang Fei, why don't you take this opportunity to rest? This official will order people to prepare some food." Qin Yining nodded and walked to the side with Lu Weigui. He asked in a low voice, "How long will the Yaman's food last?" Lu Weigui smiled bitterly and lowered his voice even more. "If we eat porridge every meal, everyone in the residence can only last for half a month. But if they had to eat gruel for every meal, the bailiffs and soap holders in the Yaman would be weak all over. How could they fight a battle then?" It was as if they were trapped on an isolated island, surrounded by endless seawater. There was no food, no fresh water, no help, no way out, and no hope. Qin Yining lowered his long eyelashes and smiled. "There's no need to be so pessimistic. Your Majesty will definitely send people over as soon as he hears the news." If the cavalry of the 5 army barracks is mobilized, they will be able to reach the city in less than a day. It's right to eat sparingly, but there's no need to worry too much. In the meantime, we'll look for an opportunity to get some food. Your Highness is right. Lu Weigui thought about it and found it reasonable. He relaxed slightly and said, "This official will order the family to move out of the inner residence. Wang Fei, please wait a moment. There's no need for such trouble." Qin Yining smiled and waved his hand. "I still want to hear about the situation outside. It's perfect to live in the outer yard. Official Lu can just find a room for me to rest in." Lu Weigui felt that it was inappropriate, so he discussed it with Qin Yining again. Seeing that Qin Yining had made up her mind and didn't seem to be angry about it, Lu Weigui gave up the idea. He found a clean room and asked people to clean it, then invited Qin Yining and the others to rest for a while. Jingzhe and the others were unwilling to leave Qin Yining's side and lived in a room next to Qin Yining's room. Qin Yining also arranged for people to take turns standing guard in front of Qin Yining's room to prevent anyone in the Yamen from offending Qin Yining. As Qin Yining and the others were taking turns to rest outside the Yamen, Lu Heng hurried over with people. "Master, the Prince Zhongshuan's consort has been confirmed to be here." This subordinate saw her clearly just now. Lu Heng pursed his thin lips. His handsome and refined face no longer had its usual gentle smile. It's really been hard on her. How did she get into trouble again? Lu Heng's lips curved slightly and his smile was cold. "Go, tell the people inside to serve the consort well. When I lead people to surround and annihilate her, they have to leave the consort's corpse intact." Lu Wenru and the other bodyguards who were accompanying him knew of Lu Heng's feelings towards Qin Yining and were all shocked. Lu Wenru hesitated and said, "Master, don't say things out of anger. If the Prince Zhongshuan's consort really dies, you AI." Lu Wenru didn't finish his sentence. Everyone knew that he liked the Qin clan, but couldn't get them. Everyone knew that he couldn't bear to kill the Qin clan and would regret it even if he killed them. Lu Heng laughed self-deprecatingly. It was clear how much of a failure he was. Everyone knew that his feelings for Qin Yining were deeply rooted, but she refused to accept it. "Forget it. Take your people and go to the rich families in the city first." Lu Heng took out a list of names from his sleeve and handed it to Lu Wenru. After all, Lu Heng had been the county magistrate here before. He knew who was rich and who was rich like the back of his hand. Break into their homes and distribute their riches and food to the people in the city. Lu Wenru nodded. "Yes, but if we encounter resistance, then ask them if they want their money or their lives. If they don't want their lives, then fulfill their wishes." "Yes, this subordinate will arrange it immediately." Lu Wenru took his people and quickly left. Lu Heng slowly walked up the red stairs and stood next to the grievance drum. He casually picked up the drumstick and hit it a few times. As soon as the drum sounded, the people in the Yamen immediately tensed up and tiptoed to the courtyard to look outside. There were even soapmen and bailiffs carefully observing the high walls, afraid that someone would climb over the wall and enter. Lu Heng said, "Prince Zhongshuan's consort, I know you're here. I didn't expect you to wallow in the mire with the imperial court's lackeys. Have you forgotten everything that happened in the past? I really look down on this kind of behavior. Qin Yining had just washed her face and changed into a clean set of clothes. Her hair hadn't been combed and was only tied into a bun with a hairband. At this moment, she slowly walked to the door and frowned slightly. She didn't reply, but Lu Weigui spoke first. Rebels and traitors. You use the banner of the common people to rebel, but you're actually doing it for yourself. Aren't you afraid of being ridiculed by the world for doing this? Or do you think everyone is a fool? Lu Heng snorted. Official Lu is a stubborn person. You're about to die, but you're still so stubborn. Fine, I'll give you time to consider. Think about your wife and children. As long as you hand over Prince Zhongshuan's consort, I promise I won't touch your family. As long as anyone in the Yamen doesn't resist, I'll let them live and let them live like ordinary people. You're daydreaming. Lu Weigui roared angrily. Chapter 1092. Lu Weigui clenched his fists and his entire body trembled uncontrollably. He gritted his teeth and his jaw was taut. It was clear that he was struggling internally. Qin Yining stood quietly to the side. Seeing Lu Weigui like this, his heart was filled with satisfaction. After all, it involved the lives of family members. Struggle and hesitation were inevitable. From Lu Weigui's point of view, Lu Heng's words were not inappropriate. She was indeed a stranger. If they could really hand her over and save everyone's lives, it would be a great deal. Qin Yining knew that the people around her were loyal. They would rather sacrifice themselves than hand her over when they were in danger. However, Lu Weigui and his subordinates might not think this way. What a good psychological attack. Qin Yining sighed softly. His long eyebrows furrowed slightly. There was understanding in his watery eyes, but there was also worry. If everyone else in the Yamen had this idea, then there would be internal strife before Lu Heng could make a move. Qin Yining's voice wasn't loud, but Lu Weigui heard it clearly. He suddenly came back to his senses, loosened his clenched fists, and said loudly, "You traitor! The imperial court is in danger, but you don't serve us well. Instead, you take advantage of the situation to loot the burning house. You're despicable. We can't be bothered to listen to the words of a lowly person like you. Even if I die, I won't let you get what you want. Why bother?" Lu Heng smiled. The corners of his lips were full of mockery. "I thought Official Lu was a smart person. I didn't expect you to be a fool. Who do you want to serve? Is it the imperial court, the incapable ruler, or the people?" His voice clearly traveled through the door into the courtyard. Lu Weigui was immediately stumped by the question. He straightened his neck for a moment before he roared with a flushed face, "Don't talk nonsense. I won't believe your words. It's up to you to believe it or not." Lu Heng said in a clear voice, "I'll give you time to think about it. If you can't hand over the Prince Zhongshuan's wife in 4 hours, I'll order people to storm the government office. Think about it carefully. Can you guys hold on? When the time comes, I won't show any mercy." After saying that, Lu Heng casually threw away the drumsticks, turned around, and walked down the red steps with his hands behind his back. There was no movement in the Yamen for a long time. Everyone, including Qin Yining, was listening attentively to the movements outside the door. All they heard was a gust of wind blowing in and the rustling of leaves, which made the surroundings seem even quieter and made them even more nervous. There was no sound from outside the door for a long time. Lu Heng seemed to really be giving them time to think. Only then did Qin Yining slowly walk over to Lu Weigui. He smiled and said, "Lord Lu, you don't have to be so troubled. We'll do our best to hold this place. If we can't do it, there's no harm in handing me over." Qin Yining had already washed her face and wiped off the disguising ointment that Xie Yu had given her. Her skin had returned to its usual white luster. Her plain clothes made her brows look like distant mountains, and her lips look like they contained a pill. Her smile was as beautiful as peaches and plums. Lu Weigui was stunned. His face reddened, and he hurriedly bowed his head. He said righteously, "Wang Fei, don't be like this. We are paid by the imperial court, and do our best to do things for your majesty. The way the one surnamed Lu does things is intolerable. It's our incompetence that we can't catch the rebels. If we hand Wang Fei over to the rebels, then other than being incompetent, we'll lose even the most basic morals. Wang Fei, please don't mention this matter again. Lu Weigui's voice was loud and clear. The bailiffs who heard also felt their blood boil. There were things that real men should do and things that they shouldn't do. Many people felt ashamed because of their moment of wavering. However, Qin Yining knew that the moment their hearts wavered, it was only a matter of time before they changed sides. This was human nature, and they couldn't be blamed. It was time to think of a way out. Qin Yining exchanged some pleasantries with Lu Weigui before returning to his room. Jing Zhe only left 2 people to guard the door. The rest of the people followed in. Ji Yun's face was pale. She lowered her voice and said anxiously, Wang Fei, this servant thinks that the situation isn't good. If Lu Hong really leads people to attack the Yamen in 4 hours, I'm afraid that those people will really hand you over. That's right, Wang Fei. I just carefully observed the surroundings and found that those people seem to be wavering. Why don't we take advantage of the chaos and leave? Liao Zhibing said anxiously, but it's harder than ascending to the heavens to escape now. The city is in chaos. Listen to the movements outside the walls. If there aren't 1,000 people outside, there are at least 800 waiting for us to escape. Everyone was at their wits' end. Qin Yining thought for a moment and said, Now is indeed not the time to break out. If Lu Hong wants to capture me, he must have set up all the possible escape routes. He's just waiting for me to walk right into his trap. For now, it's safest to stay in the Yamen. Qin Yining looked up at them and comforted them. But I also know that even if Lu Hong captures me, he won't take my life. Right now, we're just waiting to defend the Yamen. If we really fail and Lu Heng's people break in, you don't have to fight them head on. I'll pretend to be captured. You guys just have to think of a way to follow me. You know my direction so that Wang Ye's troops can come and save me. Xiao Shui pursed her lips and said, Wang Fei, we definitely won't hand you over to Lu Hong. That's right, Alliance Head. Meng Qin was also anxious. What are you saying? In this time of danger, can we just watch as you get captured? Even if we have to risk our lives, we have to. It's not worth risking your lives for such a small matter. Qin Yining interrupted Meng Qin and said in a low voice, It's not a matter of life and death. If I get captured, I still have a chance to be saved. If you guys risk your lives, then you won't have a chance to survive. Don't forget your status. You have to listen to my orders. There's no need to discuss this matter anymore. Just do as I say. After Qin Yining gave these tough orders, she poured tea. Everyone looked at each other and wanted to persuade her, but they all knew Qin Yining's personality. Once she made up her mind, she wouldn't turn back. Moreover, they didn't have a better idea at the moment. In the blink of an eye, 4 hours had passed. The sky was completely dark. However, the city didn't turn off the lights when the curfew came. Today, the streets were especially lively. Lights could be seen shining in from the top of the Yamen's high walls. The city seemed to be especially lively. There were no more cries or shouts from the commoners. Qin Yining even heard some people laughing. Lu Hong came to the Yamen's entrance and asked with a smile, How about it? Have you guys thought it through? Hand over the Prince Zhongshuan's consort, and everything will be resolved. Otherwise, you'll become a wronged spirit under the knife. You should think about your families and consider whether it's worth it to lose your lives for someone unrelated to you. The Yamen was deathly silent. No one said a word. Qin Yining led her people into the courtyard and saw Lu Weigui's wrinkled face. He clenched his fists in deep bitterness. The bailiffs were even worse. A few of them were holding swords in their hands, but their arms were hanging naturally. They had completely lost their will to fight. Qin Yining sighed softly. She knew that it would be difficult for her to escape from Lu Heng's hands today. She could either walk out on her own or be captured again after sacrificing so many lives. If she were to be captured, the former would have a lower price. Chapter 1093. Everyone was immersed in their own thoughts. It was a quiet night. Even though Qin Yining's voice wasn't loud, it still traveled into the ears of those outside the door. Lu Heng's heart stirred. He couldn't help but take a step forward until he was almost right next to the Yaman's door. She agreed. She really agreed. He knew that Qin Yining was someone who knew how to judge the situation. She was kind-hearted and definitely wouldn't be willing to see others lose their lives in order to protect her. He knew that his threat would be effective. Lu Heng took a few deep breaths and did his best to keep his voice calm to avoid losing face. Prince Zhongshuan's consort is truly a smart person. Since that's the case, please come out. Wang Fei. Jian was extremely worried and grabbed Qin Yining's arm. Jing Zhe and the others also surrounded Qin Yining, clearly intending to stop her. Lu Weigui and the others felt their faces burn. Seeing a woman step forward because of their momentary cowardice, they felt like they had been slapped in the face. If the woman could face this kind of situation calmly, why couldn't they? Could it be that they were worse than the woman? Wang Fei, you can't go. Lu Weigui strode forward and said vehemently, "How can we push you out at a critical time and use you to exchange for everyone's safety? Even if we live on in shame today, how can we walk outside in the future? Don't tell me that when people talk about us, they will think that we're the kind of people who push you out to take the blame while we hide behind and tremble in fear." Some of the bailiffs and soap operatives nodded. It could be seen that in this dilemma, some men chose to lose face and decided to go all out. But there were also people who remained silent. They clearly didn't agree with Lu Weigui's actions. Qin Yining saw all of this and had her own thoughts. If she didn't go out, it was only a matter of time before this group of people in the Yamen fought amongst themselves. At that time, their own people wouldn't be able to keep this place safe. At that time, if Lu Heng forced his way in, many people would lose their lives. It would be better to arrange everything properly and follow Lu Heng. Qin Yining knew how Lu Heng felt about her, so she was sure that Lu Heng would not kill her immediately. As long as she was still alive, there was still hope for everything. She believed that Pang Xiao already knew about her situation and would definitely come to save her immediately. Qin Yining gestured for everyone to stop talking, then turned to Lu Weigui and said, "Lord Lu, there's no need to say anything more. I've made up my mind." He then looked at Jing Zhe, Liao Zhibing, and the others. "Just do as I say." The men clenched their fists and gritted their teeth as they looked at Qin Yining worriedly. Ji Yun said, "Since Master insists, then this servant will go with you." Qin Yining shook his head and frowned. "What are you going to do?" "Stay here obediently." "No. This servant is used to serving Princess Consort. If I leave you, I really won't be able to adapt. Since Princess Consort has decided, then this servant will go with you. I can even serve you closely. I believe that Master Lu will not object." Lu Heng heard the faint voices outside the door and heard Ji Yun's words clearly. He couldn't help but smile. "No need. I will arrange for a servant. You can come out by yourself. I won't let the people who follow you go lightly, so I advise you not to bring anyone with you. Otherwise, if something happens, I will start a massacre and cause you to feel sad." Ji Yun's face turned ashen. She gritted her teeth and cursed in a low voice. Qin Yining walked to the Yaman's entrance with a heavy expression. The guards immediately moved aside and looked at Qin Yining with admiration. But more than that, they felt guilty. Jing Zhe and the others caught up and followed closely behind Qin Yining. Lu Weigui, the local district deputy, and Lu Weigui's advisor all had solemn expressions but did not immediately stop them. Qin Yining knew that this was human nature. It was normal to seek benefits and avoid harm. She was not surprised by this scene. Also, the other party had not said that they would hand her over. She was the one who had suggested it. Qin Yining opened the door. As the wooden door creaked open, the gap in the door gradually widened. Qin Yining's beautiful and calm appearance was reflected in Lu Heng's eyes. She was dressed in a simple blue dress with narrow sleeves and a waist belt. Her black hair was loosely tied up. Lu Heng immediately took a step forward. If there weren't so many people around them, Lu Heng would definitely pull Qin Yining into his arms and imprison her so that she would not have any thoughts of resisting. But now is not the time. Qin Yining stood in front of Lu Heng. Using the bright lights, she could clearly see the situation in front of the yamen. Many commoners grabbed straw mats and made mats on the street corners. There were also people who tried to talk to the rebel soldiers patrolling the city. Qin Yining looked at Lu Heng with a smile that was not a smile. She smiled and said, "I haven't seen you for a long time. Master Lu's thoughts have become more meticulous. You flatter me." Lu Heng could hear that Qin Yining was mocking him. He immediately became angry. What he hated the most was to make a fool of himself in front of Qin Yining. But when he saw her beautiful face and her graceful body, Lu Heng's anger disappeared. This kind of beauty was forced by him. It would be strange if she calmly faced him when she saw him. It did not matter if she made a few sarcastic remarks. Lu Heng turned around and ordered his attendants, "Someone prepare a carriage." Lu Wenru hurriedly responded and quickly arranged it. Lu Heng's soldiers surrounding the yamen were completely silent. They craned their necks to see what the Prince Zhongshuan's consort that their master had coerced and bribed looked like. Qin Yining was unmoved and said, "Since Master Lu has agreed, you should be able to do it, right?" Lu Heng smiled as he looked at Qin Yining. His voice was incredibly gentle. "Don't worry. Since I have agreed, how can I not do it? Do I want you to hate me in the future? Since you are willing to follow me, I will not touch a hair on the people around you. You can rest assured." "That's good." Qin Yining walked towards Lu Heng. Wang Fei, Ji Yun quickly chased after her, but was stopped by Lu Heng's soldiers in front of the yamen. Lu Heng did not even look at Ji Yun and the others who were stopped in front of the door. He only looked at Qin Yining's graceful figure as she walked towards him. As for Lu Weiguwei and the others, their faces had already turned purple. They wished that they could find a hole to hide in. At this moment, a loud sound suddenly came from the night sky. It wasn't an explosion, nor was it anything else. Instead, it was the muffled sound of something heavy crashing against the city gate. Lu Heng's eyes were cold, and he did not move for a while. Lu Wenru quickly ran forward. "Master, it seems that someone is attacking the city from outside. This subordinate has ordered people to see who is coming." So fast. Qin Yining was surprised and happy. Although she did not investigate, she guessed that it must be the imperial court's soldiers attacking. Lu Heng had to lead people to resist the imperial court suppression. He had no time to care about her here. Thinking of this, Qin Yining turned around and walked back. Chapter 1094. Qin Yining pursed her lips and struggled with all her might. In the eyes of outsiders, she was beautiful and delicate, but they were deceived by her appearance. Very few people knew that she was actually very strong. Lu Heng grabbed her wrist. Originally, he was afraid that he would hurt her, so he didn't use too much strength. Qin Yining took advantage of Lu Heng's unguarded head and suddenly exerted her strength. She stomped on Lu Heng's foot and took advantage of the pain to break free. Jingzhe and the others took advantage of the distraction of Lu Heng's subordinates and quickly restrained the imperial bodyguards in front of the door. Qin Yining quickly rushed into the yamen. "Close the door! Quickly close the door!" Liao Zhibing shouted loudly. Lu Weiguwei also regained his senses and hurriedly shouted to close the door. The bailiffs cooperated with Jingzhe and the others and forced the people in front of the door to retreat. They quickly went in and closed the door. Lu Heng's foot was in pain for being stomped on. Even after Qin Yining escaped back into the yamen, he still felt that it was inconceivable that the duck that was at his mouth had flown away just like that. He had finally caught Qin Yining with great difficulty, but she had escaped so easily. "Fight! Fight your way in! Capture the Prince Zhongshuan's consort for me!" Lu Heng's face was ashen and his voice trembled with rage. Lu Heng's subordinates heard the order and immediately rushed towards the yamen's entrance. At this moment, Lu Wenru rode a date red horse and quickly rushed over. He panted as he dismounted the horse. He was so nervous that he couldn't even speak clearly. "Master!" "Not good, it's Jiziyu. The one leading the army to attack the city, this time, is Prince Consort Ji." When Lu Heng's subordinates heard that the person leading the army was Jiziyu, everyone's expression became serious. Some of the more timid ones were so scared that they almost peed their pants. Lu Heng's brows furrowed tightly. He was only stunned for a moment before he laughed mockingly. I should have expected this. He has always been willing to part with his imperial mausoleum. Separated by a door, Qin Yining was still panting because of nervousness. He could vaguely hear the voices outside the door. When he found out that Your Majesty had sent Jiziyu, he could not help but feel slightly relieved. His back was straight and fearless just now, but now he seemed to have lost his strength and leaned on Jiyan. She never thought that she would be able to escape back to the door. If it weren't for the timely attack from the outside that distracted Lu Heng and his subordinates, she probably wouldn't have had a chance at all. Jiyan smiled happily and shook Qin Yining's hand. Wang Fei, we could be saved. Duke Ding is here. With Wang Ye's friendship with Duke Ding, they would definitely be protected. Lu Heng, who was outside the door, suddenly turned to look at the Yaman's tightly shut door. His expression was solemn, and he was in a dilemma. This was his best chance to get Qin Yining. He was too careless and let them escape. However, if he didn't take this opportunity to attack the Yaman and rescue them, he was afraid that he wouldn't have a chance to attack again. The fatuous ruler was really fast. How did Jiziyu arrive so quickly? Why didn't he come earlier or later? Why did he choose to attack the city at this time? Could it be that even the heavens were obstructing him? Lu Wenru and the others looked anxiously at Lu Heng, waiting for his orders. The imperial court sending troops was not a small matter. Lu Heng brought a lot of people, but their opponent was Jiziyu, who was as famous as Pang Xiao. In today's world, other than Pang Xiao, only Eugene Khan could lead troops and fight against Jiziyu. Lu Heng wanted to immediately attack the Yaman and rescue them, but his rationality told him that he had more important things to do. Master, Lu Wenru was very nervous. He was afraid that Lu Heng would be impulsive and ignore the big picture. Lu Heng came back to his senses. He looked deeply at the Yaman and said in a deep voice, "Forget it. Perhaps this is the will of the heavens. Surround this place and don't let anyone enter or leave." Yes, Lu Wenru nodded. However, one of Lu Heng's subordinates, who was trying to curry favor with him, asked in a low voice, "Master, should we attack with fire? I don't believe that person won't escape. At that time, we'll be able to catch him." Lu Heng glanced at that person and shook his head. "No need. Just listen to my orders and guard this place tightly. Remember, you can't use fire and you can't order people to break in." However, his brothers had already gathered here. They had been waiting for a long time for an opportunity, and now they finally had one. Lu Heng could see what everyone was thinking. He ordered in a deep voice, "Just listen to my orders." Lu Wenru hurriedly agreed. Lu Wenru led a horse over. Lu Heng mounted the horse and turned back to look at the Yaman again. Separated by a door, he naturally couldn't see the person inside. However, Lu Heng could almost imagine Qin Yining anxiously leaning against the door with his brows furrowed. This time, he had no choice but to consider the big picture. He had to give up this opportunity to obtain Qin Yining. He might regret it for the rest of his life, but for the sake of his foundation, he had no choice but to make this choice. The heavens weren't willing to help him. It was truly a pity. Lu Heng led his men and left on their horses. The remaining people could only listen to his orders and continue to surround the Yaman. They even had to be aware of the flies that were going in and out. However, they didn't understand the purpose of Lu Heng's arrangements. Qin Yining and his men leaned against the door. They heard the sound of horse hooves gradually fading away. The sound of chatter also weakened. They knew that Lu Heng had already left with a portion of his men. They let out a sigh of relief. Like Qin Yining, everyone looked as if they had just survived a disaster. Lu Weigui stepped forward in embarrassment and bowed to Qin Yining. He said guiltily, "Wang Fei, please forgive me. This official was muddle-headed and unexpectedly allowed you to go out and take risks." Fortunately, Duke Ding arrived in time and attracted Lu Heng's attention. That was why you were able to come back. Otherwise, wouldn't we feel guilty for the rest of our lives? If Jiziyu's Shui army hadn't attacked, Qin Yining would have been captured by Lu Heng in exchange for their safety. Even if they had survived, they would have been trapped in the shadows for the rest of their lives. This was because their lives were exchanged by sacrificing a weak woman. Qin Yining could understand Lu Weigui. He couldn't help but smile and say, "Official Lu's words are too serious. Aren't I fine now?" Although Qin Yining appeared to be magnanimous. However, in the following period of time, the attitude of the bailiffs and soapmen changed when they saw Qin Yining's entourage. Originally, there was still some contempt, but now they were all attentive. It was obvious that they felt guilty. Qin Yining didn't care about this. He instructed Jing Ziyu, Liao Zhibing, Meng Qin, and the others. Today, Lu Heng probably won't attack the yamen. Even if he wants to, he doesn't have the energy to do so. Everyone, stay back for the night. The rest of you need to rest well. Only by conserving your energy can you have more energy to face any sudden events. Yes, everyone obeyed Qin Yining's orders unconditionally. However, after returning to the room, Ji Yin still asked worriedly, "Wang Fei, that surnamed Lu really won't send people to break in?" Of course not. Qin Yining was lying on the heated Kong bed by the window. Her body was covered with a thin blue cotton quilt. Under the dim light, her skin was as lustrous as snow. He already has the desire to be independent. Otherwise, he wouldn't have summoned all the commoners to the public square with such fanfare. At that time, he killed the chicken to warn the monkey. After all, the commoners who died were in the minority. Later on, even though I was separated by the door, I heard that he did a lot of robbing the rich to give to the poor outside. The commoners in the city didn't see him indiscriminately killing the innocent, and he even distributed money to everyone. Tell me, in this kind of situation, won't the commoners be very moved? Jian thought for a moment and said, "They should be. Not to mention anything else, there are so many commoners. How can they not be jealous when they see the rich and powerful living in luxury and wearing gold and silver?" Lu Heng must have grasped this point. He gave these commoners some benefits. After all, those who are alive and have no relatives or friends with the dead are the majority of the county's commoners. That's right. He wants a good reputation. It wasn't easy for him to raise his reputation by robbing the rich to give to the poor. He won't barge in just because of a little girl like me. If he really killed the people in the yamen, it would definitely cause panic among the commoners. I'm afraid that his bad reputation will never be washed away. Ji Yin nodded. That's why we're still the safest place for now. Qin Yining nodded and covered his mouth to yawn. When the incident in the city broke out, I kept feeling that there was an invisible thread that pulled us together step by step. However, it's worth reassuring that your family's Wang you didn't personally experience such a chaotic situation. Otherwise, I don't know how tired he would be with such serious injuries. Qin Yining's voice gradually weakened. Ji Yin lay on her side on the edge of the Kong bed. When she saw Qin Yining fall asleep in exhaustion, she also yawned and forced herself to close her eyes and sleep. At this time, something could happen at any time. They didn't dare to let themselves go. After a good night's sleep, Qin Yining asked Lu Weigui about the situation in the city after daybreak. Lu Weigui said, "The commoners in the city are probably so scared that they don't dare to go out. Last night, the incident in the city went on for an entire night and only calmed down in the early morning." At this point, Lu Weigui looked a little hesitant and muttered, "But there's one thing." "What is it?" Qin Yining raised his eyebrows. Lu Weigui said, "Lu Heng told the commoners that everyone was present when the imperial mausoleum was destroyed. Your Majesty would definitely kill everyone present. That's why Lu Heng had the soldiers and horses resist stubbornly against the people who attacked the city." The commoners all believed Lu Heng's words. Many people spontaneously went to help. Yesterday, when Duke Ding attacked the city, the cannons were blind and mistakenly killed many commoners who helped. Right now, the city is probably in chaos. Qin Yining immediately frowned. He knew that Lu Heng must have used this incident to smear Li Qitian's reputation. He wanted to defeat Li Qitian. As long as he had the ability, Qin Yining would admire him. But he shouldn't have taken advantage of the commoners' lives. It seemed that sacrificing a few commoners was like sacrificing an ant in Lu Heng's eyes. Was Lu Heng, who disregarded human lives to achieve his goal, still the Lu Heng she knew in the past. Princess, Jingzhe whispered, why don't we take advantage of the chaos outside to find a way to rush out? We don't know how Duke Ding is doing right now. If he doesn't pose a threat to Lu Heng and gives Lu Heng time to breathe, you'll still be in danger. Jingzhe said what everyone was thinking. Everyone was afraid that Qin Yining would be arrested, so they all nodded. That makes sense. We should seize the opportunity to rush out. Chapter 1095. Lu Weigui knew that Wang Fei was willing to ask him because she respected him. If she gave orders to him, he had to do it according to his status. This Wang Fei was not a normal person. She was Prince Zhongshuan's wife, and Ji Ziyu, who was attacking the city, was Prince Zhongshuan's sworn brother. Wang Fei really thinks too highly of this lowly official. Lu Weigui sighed and said, this lowly official doesn't have any ideas right now. Based on what this lowly official says, it is a good thing to take advantage of the chaos outside to charge out. However, the Yamen is heavily guarded and is not so easy to break through. If there are casualties, it would be a disgrace to the brothers. Qin Yining thought to himself, I've said everything to Lu Weigui. Isn't she thinking about this as well? The difficulties are in front of them and are all obvious. But Qin Yining immediately understood Lu Weigui's thoughts and couldn't help but smile and shake his head. These people who had been in the bureaucracy for a long time were unavoidable in their actions. Qin Yining did not make things difficult for others and said, there are many people outside. Right now, Lu Heng does not want to use lightning methods, so we are fine for now. We don't know the result of the attack on the city by Duke Ding's army. If Lu Heng becomes angry and kills us to vent his anger, or wants to take us as hostages, then with just our people, can we be a match for so many people outside? Lu Weigui shook his head and sighed. This is the case. Not to mention anything else, if the other side uses fire, we will all suffocate to death here. Wang Fei, do you mean take a gamble? Qin Yining said, there is no other way at the moment. Everyone's expression was grave. They were afraid of the danger in front of them and the unknown future. But they also understood that if they did not take a gamble, they would probably die here. Qin Yining observed everyone. Seeing everyone calm down and think about the path ahead, he slowly said, we don't have to let the brothers risk their lives. I don't want to sacrifice anyone. Let's listen carefully to the movements outside. If the battle becomes intense, we may find a chance to charge out. Lu Weigui agreed and said, Wang Fei is right. When the situation outside the city is most tense, Lu Heng will probably send reinforcements. The defense here will naturally be relaxed. The bailiffs nodded as if they had seen a glimmer of hope. Qin Yining hesitated, fearing that they would underestimate the enemy and get injured or even lose their lives due to their misjudgment. He had no choice but to say, that may not necessarily be the case. If we escape, Lu Heng will be attacked from both front and rear, which is equivalent to his own backyard on fire. That person, when he has the heart to deal with outsiders, he will definitely ensure that there are no other hidden dangers. With that said, Lu Weigui also felt that he had been too naive about the problem. But if that's the case, wouldn't it be harder than ascending to the heavens for us to escape? One of the bailiffs couldn't help but speak up. Qin Yining said, everyone, don't be nervous. It doesn't matter if we can break out or not. If we can't, we can still defend this place to the death. I won't let everyone die in vain. Everyone nodded, but it was unknown how many people believed Qin Yining's words. In everyone's minds, a person of noble birth like Wang Fei would not care about the lives of her subordinates. If it was necessary, they would be sent to their deaths as a scapegoat. Qin Yining also knew that empty words were not enough to win the trust of others. She did not force everyone to believe her, so she did not explain further. Everyone dispersed and returned to their own places to guard against Lu Heng's people attacking at any time. Qin Yining's group returned to the rooms that Lu Weigui had arranged for them to rest in the outer compound. On this day, there would often be sounds coming from the city. It was hard not to hear the shouts of battle in a small county. In addition, The commoners believed Lu Heng's words and were afraid that the people of the imperial court would come to massacre the city. They all went to help defend the city. As a result, each family arranged for a few people to go. However, swords had no eyes on the battlefield. When Jiziyu ordered people to attack the city, rocks and arrows accidentally injured some commoners. How could the people in the city remain calm after hearing the news of their children's deaths? The entire Huichuan County was shrouded in the fear of war. Outside the yamen, the rebel soldiers that Lu Hong had arranged were still guarding the place. Jingzhi cautiously wanted to go out to investigate several times, but even with his outstanding martial arts, he couldn't escape the eyes of everyone under the tight security of sentries every 2 steps and sentries every 10 steps. Is there really no other way than to force our way in? Lu Weigui said in disbelief when he heard the result. The atmosphere in the courtyard was gloomy. Even though the bailiffs and soapy officials took turns to rest, the high tension still made everyone extremely tired. They wanted to live, but now they were trapped here like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. Sooner or later, there would not be enough food to eat. Sooner or later, Lu Hong would lose his patience and order people to attack. Under such circumstances, waiting was a kind of torture that made them mentally and physically exhausted. Those with weaker endurance even thought that it would be better if the other party attacked now. If they could not win, they would fight to the death. They would not wait for a knife to fall on their heads like this. Qin Yining would also walk around the yamen. Seeing that everyone was anxious and fearful, the atmosphere was oppressive and there was no fighting spirit, he could not help but worry. Princess. Lu Weigui invited Qin Yining to a secluded corner and discussed in a low voice, Princess, why don't we organize people to attack now and try? What if we can escape? If this continues, I'm afraid that before we can successfully break out of the encirclement, someone will surrender first. Qin Yining was also worried about this. If someone surrendered while the others were unprepared and opened the yamen door, this situation was simply unimaginable. But if we want to rush out now, the odds are really not good. I'm afraid that some of our brothers will be sacrificed for this. Qin Yining was helpless. If we can't escape after sacrificing our brothers, things will be more difficult in the future. Lu Weigui was so worried that he almost scratched his hair. It's really a dilemma. Qin Yining sighed. Isn't it a dilemma? She came to destroy the imperial mausoleum. Although she did not do it herself, she achieved her goal. She helped Pang Xiao vent his anger. She just didn't expect that Li Qitian would really do the worst-case scenario that she had predicted. For the sake of the imperial mausoleum, he could ignore the lives of the people under the famine and even lead the army to war. How could such a person be a king? They could not rush out at this time, so they could only wait for the opportunity. But before they could find the opportunity to rush out, they heard many worried voices on the other side of the wall. How could this be? We were defending well at first, and Duke Ding couldn't do anything to our Huichuan County for a while, but the Tatans suddenly appeared. Weren't the Tatan defeated by Duke Ding? Now, they suddenly came here. It must be premeditated. It's a good thing that Duke Ding doesn't care about attacking the city and concentrates on dealing with the Tatan. What's so good about it? Is your brain filled with tofu pudding? If the Tatan defeated Duke Ding, the next Tatan to face the Tatan will be our Huichuan County. Tell me, how much ability do we have to fight against the Tatan? As soon as these words came out, the discussion outside the wall stopped abruptly, and the atmosphere suddenly froze. Qin Yining and others couldn't help but feel nervous when they heard this. Back in the wing room, Qin Yining paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. How could the situation become so complicated? This was Huichuan County, which was not far from the capital. Although the emperor of the previous dynasty only said that the capital was set at the capital in the north, for many years, there had never been a situation where the Tatan directly marched into the capital. If the Tatan appeared here, then what about the cities in the north of Huichuan County? Would they all fall into the hands of the Tatan? If the Tatan broke through here, then the Tatan army would reach the capital in less than a day and attack the city. At that time, even if Li Qitian had the Tiger Talisman, he wouldn't be able to make the Tiger Army, the Dragon Army, and the South Pingnan Army rush over in the blink of an eye, right? Qin Yining didn't care about Li Qitian's throne at all. What she cared about was the people. If the iron hooves of the Tatans really trampled over them, how could the people survive? After years of war, natural disasters, and man-made disasters, the famine had not been solved. If the Tatan attacked, burned, killed, and looted, it would be too difficult to make the people, who had experienced many twists and turns, bow their heads and acknowledge an outsider as their master. Qin Yining was so anxious that the corners of her mouth started to blister. Qin Yining wasn't the only one who was anxious. The people inside and outside the walls of the Yamen were also thinking about it. Even if they were on different sides, they were still Dezhou's men. How could they be willing to see the mountains and rivers being destroyed? However, they all had different identities and missions. At this time, they could only stand there and be anxious. Darren, why don't we just charge out? If we die, we brothers will accept it. If we wait for death here, we will either be killed by the rebels or be killed by the Tatans. This is too torturous. Yes, Darren. Once you give the order, we will immediately charge out without any hesitation. Lu Weigui was also anxious. It was October, and his nose and temples were all sweaty. His collar was also soaked with sweat. With so many people waiting for his order, he really couldn't bear such a huge pressure. Let's discuss with the Prince Zhongshuan's consort first before making a decision. Lu Weigui wiped his face and said, "The Prince Zhongshuan's status is noble after all. She must have her own unique views. No matter how bad it is, it will be easier for us to survive if we follow her." Okay, many people agreed. The private advisor and the local district deputy looked at each other and then followed behind Lu Weigui to Qin Yining's room. After hearing Lu Weigui's intentions and seeing the anxious bailiffs that Lu Weigui brought, Qin Yining knew that the people's hearts couldn't be calmed down. She was also having a headache over this matter. Being trapped here, even if she had thousands of ideas, she couldn't use them. Liao Zhibing, Jing Zhe, and the others led people to guard Qin Yining's side and discreetly sized up the people in front of them. No matter how tense the situation was, their first task was to protect the princess consort. Just as the situation was tense, the district deputy suddenly opened his mouth. "If the Tatan attack, we only have one way to survive." Qin Yining and Lu Weigui looked at this person at the same time. Lu Weigui said in a low voice, "What do you mean?" Chapter 1096. Qin Yining didn't immediately express his opinion. He frowned and looked at the county magistrate, his eyes full of curiosity. Liang County Magistrate looked at Qin Yining without flinching. He was convinced that he was right and didn't feel guilty at all. He was sure that he was looking for a way out for his brothers. He was even willing to offend the Prince Zhongshuan's concubine for his brothers. Seeing him like this, how could Qin Yining not guess what he was thinking? "Shut up." Lu Weigui stood up angrily and said, "Liang Qiuping, what do you mean? Do you want to defect to the enemy? Am I wrong? Sir, you don't care about the lives of your brothers. At the critical moment, you can order everyone to open a way for you. No matter what, you have to find a way to survive. But there's so many brothers. Are they all going to die because of your foolishness?" Although he was talking to Lu Weigui, Liang County Magistrate's eyes kept glancing at Qin Yining. He was obviously scolding Qin Yining indirectly, implying that Qin Yining didn't care about the lives of others because he had a way out. Lu Weigui was furious and shouted, "I didn't mean to disregard everyone's safety. If I did, why didn't I break out early? Why did I wait until now? Sir, since you didn't think so, why didn't you think more about your subordinates? It's because we need to think about it that we're talking about this here. I didn't make my own decision. But what are you talking about? Defect to the Tatan and then become a knife for them to kill the people of Dezhou? What else can we do? You nobles all have a way out, but we don't deserve to die." Lu Weigui and Liang County Magistrate argued until their faces and necks were red. Both of them had their own opinions, but they had already made their opinions clear. Lu Weigui wanted everyone to live, but he would never surrender to the Tatan to deal with Lu Hong. Even if Lu Hong was a rebel, he was still a citizen of Dezhou. But Liang County Magistrate was willing to betray Dezhou in order to survive. Qin Yining didn't want to comment on who was right and who was wrong. He only said, "Both of you, listen to me first." The two of them glared at each other like fighting cocks. After a long while, they finally looked at Qin Yining angrily. Qin Yining said, "None of us know what the situation outside the city is like. Did Tayton really attack them? We don't know whether Duke Ding really has no power to fight against the Tayton, or whether Lu Heng's people can defend the city. It's too hasty to make a decision just by hearing a few words outside." Lu Weigui took a deep breath and agreed. "Princess is right." Then, he glared at County Deputy Liang with disdain. Now, before the dust has settled and County Deputy Liang has already thought of surrendering to the enemy. Isn't this a little too early? Liang Xiaoping was very angry, but he couldn't find any words to refute. Qin Yining saw that the two of them were about to quarrel again. He frowned and said, "You two are already fighting among yourselves before the situation is clear and you haven't thought of a solution. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by others? Isn't it too early for you to make a decision?" Lu Weigui was stunned. Then he gradually understood, and his expression became awkward. County Magistrate Liang didn't think the same as Lu Weigui. He was still suppressing the anger in his heart. He said with a mocking tone, "Princess, it's easy for you to say that. You have a noble status. Even if the city is breached, you can find people who will protect you with their lives. But what about us brothers? No matter how chaotic the imperial court is, no matter how the Taytans attack, what does it have to do with us? We are the ones who usually eat, drink, and wear gold and silver. When something happens, we have to die." It had to be said that Liang Xiaoping was very good at stirring up emotions. When they were quarreling, some of the bailiffs who came with him already felt the same way. Now, with a few words, he stirred up the emotions of the bailiffs and soaps. No matter if the imperial court treated them well or not, people were greedy. If they were given a little good, they would want more. They only felt that County Deputy Liang's words were reasonable, and it was exactly what they wanted. Everyone was quiet at first, but when they heard County Deputy Liang's words, they all became more agitated. The feeling of being surrounded by enemies and facing death was too terrible. This feeling of having a knife hanging over your head and being at the end of the road was not something that people like them who were usually better than ordinary people could understand. Qin Yining was reprimanded, but he wasn't angry. Under the pressure of fear, people's hearts were sensitive and impetuous. At this time, even if she said more, it wouldn't have any effect. Instead, it would make people more determined. Qin Yining said calmly, "I won't let people die for nothing. Right now, we are surrounded and can't know the real situation outside. It won't be easy to know what they are planning. If you have doubts in your hearts, it won't be good to make a decision immediately. You can wait and see for a while before making a decision." Speaking to hear, Qin Yining smiled mockingly. "I didn't bring you here. I don't have any right to order you. If you feel that you won't be able to survive by following me, you could do whatever you want. But there is one thing that I want to make clear." Qin Yining looked around and saw that everyone's attention was on him. He then said, "The Taytan people are not my people. For many years, they have been at the border. They have burned, killed, and robbed the people at the border. They have done all kinds of evil. When they hit the grain and grass, they hurt our people. Facing such jackals and wolves, if anyone has the intention to seek refuge, I won't let them off easily." When the men heard this, they couldn't help but be silent. Some people were reflecting, and some people were not convinced. Wang Fei says it so easily. You are of noble birth and live a luxurious life. How can you understand the suffering of the people below? Duke Ding is Prince Zhongshuan's sworn brother. He will come to save you at a critical moment. District Magistrate Liang said mockingly, "You have a way out, and you don't care about the lives of your brothers? If you run away, how are we going to survive? If we don't seek refuge with the Taytan, are we willing to die?" Qin Yining didn't know how there could be such a person who could speak so confidently of betraying the country. Qin Yining was even more lazy to persuade the other. Dogs only cared about the bones in front of them, Pigs only cared about the food in the trough. They couldn't understand the human language of something that wasn't human. Qin Yining waved his hand and said, "Do as you please." Finishing, he turned and went into the inner room. Jing Zhe, Ji Yun, and the others immediately returned to their original positions. This was the Yamen, Lu Weigui's territory. It wasn't good for them to send the guests away, but it was clear that they refused to talk. Lu Weigui hated District Magistrate Liang for saying this. After leaving the room, he strode to the study. District Magistrate Liang and his advisor talked in a low voice for a while before calling for the brothers to go back and guard. Inside the room, Qin Yining said in a low voice to Jing Zhe, "Pay attention to arranging people to protect Magistrate Lu in secret. In such a life and death situation, there are many people who will do anything to survive." Jing Zhe nodded and said in a low voice, "You suspect that they will act against Magistrate Lu? Maybe they won't kill Magistrate Lu, but will kidnap him and use him as a bargaining chip to negotiate with the Titan. In reality, their best bargaining chip isn't Magistrate Lu, but me." Ji Yun thought of Qin Yining's energy in the Titan, and the hairs on her back stood up. "Princess, don't talk nonsense. You won't encounter those things again. We will do our best to protect you and won't let you fall into the hands of the Titan." Seeing Ji Yun so nervous, Qin Yining couldn't help but pat her hand and said with a smile, "I know. So besides protecting Lu Weigui, you also have to think of ways to protect me." Jing Zhe said seriously, "Princess, don't worry. Even if we risk our lives, we will protect you. We will protect you as well." Qin Yining waved his hand. "Why do I need you to do this? Moreover, from now on, if I don't have a chance to break out of the encirclement, I won't go out. It will be easier for you to protect me." Jing Zhe agreed with a smile. Seeing that Qin Yining was still able to talk and laugh freely in such a tense situation, he couldn't help but admire him. Even his own nervous mood was relieved a lot. "Princess, do you think Duke Ding can win?" Jing Zhe asked. Qin Yining said, "There is no doubt about Duke Ding's ability. If there's a slight setback, it must be because he was caught off guard by the other party. However, as long as Duke Ding can catch his breath and has time to adjust, he will definitely be able to defend this place and not be invaded by the Titan." It was ridiculous. Just a moment ago, the people outside the city were attacking Huichuan County, but now they had to face the Titan directly. How did the Titan come here? Did they disguise themselves and enter to Zhou? Or did they directly advance to achieve their goal? Or did someone come to their rescue? Qin Yining's expression became more and more serious when he thought of this. If there was really a spy, Ji Ziyu's actions would be difficult. He didn't know if Pang Zhao's injuries were better now. If he wasn't injured, he would have taken her back by now. Qin Yining's imagination ran wild. Unknowingly, 2 hours had passed. During this time, everyone was carefully listening to what Lu Heng's subordinates said outside the wall. They found that they were not the only ones worried. Lu Heng's subordinates were also worried about the Titan invasion. In the evening, the conversation outside changed again. Qin Yining. "Duke Ding is probably an arrow at the end of its flight. He lost to his former opponent just like that. Didn't he sigh? If Duke Ding came with a dragon stallion army, he would definitely be able to beat the Titan until they cried for their parents. But now that we have been abandoned here, we are also going to cry for our parents. I don't know what it is like outside the city now." Qin Yining frowned. Ji Yun shook his head. Just as he was about to speak, the low voice of the Han, who was on duty outside, suddenly came from outside. "Who are you?" "This is Huichuan County's Yamen. How can you come and go as you please?" His voice was rough, but he heard the Han exclaim in shock, "It's you. Please come in." The huge change in his attitude made Qin Yining feel puzzled. Ji Yun went to lift the curtain and saw a tall and thin figure walk in. He was holding a disguised mask that was as thin as a cicada's wing. He had delicate features. It was Mu Jinghu. When he was interrogated at the door just now, it was because Mu Jinghu had taken off his disguise that they calmed down and had a sudden change in attitude. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.